Popped up? All right, cool. All right. Hello? All right, it's live? All right, cool. So let me try to get this Kawakab on here. How do you get Kawakab to show? Yeah, I'm just trying to switch the scene so you can see Guatemala. Well, I see you on the computer, but I just don't see you on the YouTube. I gotta press the. I got you. I got you out. No problem. Do your thing, bro. That's
Read. Jeremiah chapter 51 and verse 10. Is that louder? Is that loud enough? The Lord hath brought forth our righteousness. Come, and let us declare in Zion the work of the Lord our God. No, he stepped out. Huh. Hey, Paulo, can you call y'all and tell them they can't hear Kawakab on the YouTube? Con. Oh,
Italiano. Italiano. Ah.
so the people can't hear it. Can't hear my YouTube. All right, 1 second. Yeah, he said he can't hear Kawakab. Here we go. We can't hear you, Kawakab. I gotta find the sound setting.
So you can hear you guys in the school, but they can't hear the teacher.
Can they hear it now?
All right, like, come in and let me know, man. You can hear it now.
Find the sound setting. You can't. Hey, Kawakab, can you say something so we can see if it's we
Yeah,
can hear
I'm
it?
keep on. All right, yeah. So and then you be talking some sound.
All right, it's perfect. It's going, bro. It's going.
It's coming through.
It's going through.
Okay, good. All right, can you hear
Hey,
it?
it was. The sound's working, bro.
Okay.
Yeah, I went to that part. You showed me that microphone part. And I pressed
It's a
whatever you pressed last
microphone
time.
issue. the volume of the
It's working now, bro.
right?
I need to send me the classes you taking with how this shit works. But it's working, bro. It sounds working, bro.
Like, this looks like school, man. Thank you. I don't know how everybody be sitting all over. It's like y'all must be on somebody's wanted list. Nobody want to be found on the camera.
No. Let me know when you want me to continue reading, or do you want me to read that verse again?
You're talking to me? Say that again.
Let me know when you want me to continue to read or read that verse again.
I'm waiting for Daria to let me know.
It's all good.
You know, that we clear.
And we clear. It's all good, bro. We can hear. Everything's clear.
Okay, cool. All right. Okay, so brother, read Jeremiah chapter 51 and verse 10 again, and just so that we'll read it first.
Come on. Jeremiah chapter 51 and verse 10. The Lord hath brought forth our righteousness. Come and let us declare in Zion the work of the Lord our power.
So remember, like I said, this is verse 10, and in relation to verse 8 and 9, the last we read, the Most High prophesied about an effort to help Babylon recover, an effort to help America. It said that we would have healed Babylon, right? I'm going to read it. You have to go back there, but verse 8 9 says, Babylon is suddenly fallen and destroyed. Howl for her, take balm for her pain. Balm is like an ointment, you know, a medicated, a medicinal ointment with the intention of restoring some health to whatever the problem is. It says, if so, she may be healed. Verse 9, we would have healed Babylon, but she is not healed. So that means what? This is what we're witnessing this right now. We're witnessing the process of the effort going into to exercising America back to her economic preeminence, back to her military preeminence. You understand? Back to her social, meaning everybody wanted to come, and it was the land of opportunity. That's gone. So that's what this is prophesying. So when verse 10 says, the Lord hath brought forth our righteousness, in other words, this is letting you know, as a process of not being able to restore America, this means Israel's righteousness, meaning our salvation, is on the horizon. So what is this referring to? We got some precepts to go to. This is referring to, we're going to go to 3 other places in Jeremiah and show you what it is that we're going to be declaring. It says, and come and let us declare in Zion the work of the Lord our power. What is it in the future that we're going to be declaring? We're going to be declaring about the great deliverance that the Most High would have recently made. And that's in Jeremiah. There's 3 places, so write them down first, and then we're going to go there. So you're going to write down Jeremiah chapter 16, verses 14 and 15. Jeremiah chapter 16, verses 14 and 15. From there, Jeremiah chapter 23, verses 7 and 8. And then from there, Jeremiah chapter 31, verses 7 to 11. We'll read them again. Jeremiah chapter 16, verses 14 through 15. Jeremiah chapter 23, verses 7 and 8. And Jeremiah chapter 31, verses 7 through 11. So go ahead and let's read those precepts, because this is what is going to be declared. Right now, we're prophesying, we're sharing the prophecies, but the time is going to come when the whole world, everywhere Israel is going to be, this is going to be shocked.
Jeremiah chapter 16, verse 14. Therefore, behold, the days come, saith the Lord, that it shall no more be said, the Lord liveth that brought up the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt. But the Lord liveth that brought up the children of Israel from the land of the north, and from all the lands whither he had driven them. And I will...
That's the new That's the righteousness that's going to be declared in Zion. That the Lord liveth, it will know. And in other words, because to this very day, the greatest thing that happened to our nation, and it's so much so that it's our most important high holy day, is the Passover. And the Passover commemorates when the Most High reached into Egypt, completely broke it down, and did what? And destroyed it and delivered our forefathers from the land of Egypt. So that's not going to be saying anymore. But the Most High, but it's going to be said, the Lord liveth that brought up and led the house of Israel out of the land of the north and out of all the countries where he driven them. Why does it say the land of the north? Because it's talking about, and people will scoff at this, it's talking about North America. You understand? And in the Latin American world, everybody knows when you say the North Americans, you ain't referring to Canada, which is actually the northernmost part of North America. Nobody says Los Norteamericanos in reference to Canada. We say Los Canadienses, the Canadians. But nobody says Los Norteamericanos in reference to the Mexicans. We say Los Mexicanos. But whenever we say Los Norteamericanos, the North Americans, we say that in reference to what? To the United States of America. And it's many other references. Reference in Joel chapter 2, where the Most High said he would remove the northern army from out of their premises and take them over into a barren, he gives you geography, to a barren land with their face toward the east sea and their hinder part toward the great sea. And the east sea is the Sea of Japan, and the hindermost sea, or the hinder sea, is the Mediterranean. And that's where the forces of America's military have been deployed since 1991, since the Desert Storm days. So this is the land of the north that the Heavenly Father is going to deliver. But then, and everybody can say, I listen to all the alternative, well, not all, because there's no way in the world I could be listening to all of them, but I listen to many of the alternative broadcasts. And I listen to people calling in from Australia, people calling into these talk shows from England, people calling in from Hawaii, people calling in from all over the world saying, if America falls, the world is lost hope. They really believe that. But it goes to show you when the scriptures say that I'm going to deliver my children from the land of the north and all the other countries, it shows you that that is the preeminent country. Britain ain't the preeminent country now. Russia's not the preeminent country. America is. That's why they said, make America great again. So here we are. That's what's going to be proclaimed. The Lord liveth that brought up and raised the children of Israel out of the land of America, but not out of Egypt anymore. Now we're going to get a similar message in the next verse. What's the next verse? The next verse is in Jeremiah chapter 23. It's basically a reiteration of the same thing. If you're going to read, brothers, you're going to have to read loud, okay? You're in Jeremiah chapter, you're going to chapter 23, verse 7 and 8.
Jeremiah chapter 23, verse 7. Therefore, behold, the days come, saith the Lord, that they shall no more say, the Lord liveth, which brought up the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt. But the Lord liveth, which brought up and which led the seed of the house of Israel out of the north country, and from all countries whither I had driven them. And they...
That's bad. Because what? No, so let's say we're in Indonesia. We're all over the world. Let's mention some other places. Indonesia, we're in the South Pacific, we're in Africa. But how come the Most High don't say, and they shall say, the Lord liveth that brought up the seed of Israel from the land of Ham? Because we're there. But that ain't the preeminent country. That's not the preeminent the most powerful kingdom on the planet right now, and in the history of at least our modern history, post-flood, is not in Africa. It ain't in the Middle East. It ain't in Europe. It's right here in the Americas, in between Canada and Mexico. So he said, I'm going to deliver them. It's going to replace the ancient Passover as the most important commemoration. That's what it's going to do. Go to the last one, Jeremiah chapter 31, verses 7 to 11.
Jeremiah chapter 31 and verse 7, right? 7 to 11. Okay, come.
Jeremiah chapter 31 and verse 7. For thus saith the Lord,
Sing with gladness for Jacob, and shout among the chief of the nations. Publish ye, praise ye, and say, O Lord, save thy people, the remnant of Israel. Behold, I will bring them from the north country and gather them from the coast of the earth. And with them
every place, the north country. So and why? Because all eyes right now are on America. And with the Most High be there, it's going to be announced all over the world. Now, how do you know that? Because it's the same thing in Revelations, where the Most High said, once that place is burning, once the 10 horns burn, make her naked and burn her with fire, it says all the kings of the earth, which means the heads of state, are going to look and say, alas, for that great city, and it was destroyed in 1 hour. It says then all the merchants, which means all of the multinational corporations that control all of commerce, all of the globe's commerce. It says that the merchants are going to say, alas, that great city, where all that had ships were made rich by the abundance of her delicacies. So that's describing the place where everybody takes advantage of their consumer population. Everybody, the world's greatest, you guys been looking these things up independently. I mean, because I was here, he be putting these things on the screen. That America is the greatest consumer nation on the planet. And that's what the trade wars with China was about, that Donald Trump just defeated the Chinese in, and days afterward the COVID broke out. When you have trade wars, what are they struggling? What is the strife over? The strife in a trade war is over your products and the consumer base that's going to be shopping for your products. Are you going to have more of your products in America, bringing more American dollars over to China than America bringing more Chinese dollars? Or is the setup going to be where more people are all over the world? Because during post-World War II, you went all over the world. Like we look at a Mercedes-Benz, damn man, but a Cadillac and a Lincoln, a damn Ford overseas was like a Mercedes here. American products, brother, it was the thing to have. General Electric toasters, General Electric refrigerators, a Maytag washing machine. This is talking about this place. So Revelation tells you that. It says, for all that had goods were made rich by the abundance of her delicacies. Everything that could be sold was bought and purchased in America. That's how we know the North Country was talking about this place. And then he says, and then all the other places. Continue reading that. What verse did you leave off on?
I'm still on verse 8, lower portion.
Go ahead, read it from 8 from the top again.
Okay. Behold, I will bring them from the north country and gather them from the coast of the earth, and with them the blind and the lame.
Listen to this, I'm going to bring them from the north country. And from he always makes what? The focus point of us being delivered from the most powerful kingdom. Then he secondarily claims that I'm going to bring them from everywhere else. The coast mean all the places in the periphery of the north country. Go ahead.
The woman with child and her that travaileth.
We're going to come in every state. It's going to be people feeble. It's going to be blind people. It's going to be pregnant women. Go ahead.
With child together. A great company shall return thither. They shall come with weeping, and with supplications will I lead them. I will cause them to walk by the rivers of waters in a straight way, wherein they shall not stumble. For I am a father to Israel, and Ephraim is my firstborn.
Check this. Now, why does he say I'm a father to Israel and Ephraim is my firstborn? Because Ephraim, remember, is symbolic of the northern kingdom that consisted of 9 tribes that were taken away before Judah was. So when he says Ephraim is my firstborn, he's telling you Ephraim is Israel. Just like he told Pharaoh, let my people go. Israel is my firstborn. Let my people go. And if you don't let my firstborn go, I'm going to kill your firstborn. He's telling you Ephraim is Israel. And then according to the scriptures, where did Ephraim go? to the Americas. Even the kingdom of Israel, the northern kingdom, whose king would all come from the tribe of Ephraim, came over here first. So this is talking about these lands. And in these lands, in this hemisphere, the preeminent country since World War II of the globe, since the end of World War II, is the United States of America. Go ahead, is there more?
Hear the word
Go
of
on to verse 11.
God. Hear the word of the Lord, O ye nations, and declare it in the isles afar off, and say, He that scattered Israel will gather him, and keep him as a shepherd doeth his flock.
He that scattered Israel is going to gather him. Go ahead.
For the Lord hath redeemed Jacob, and ransomed him from the hand of him that was stronger than he.
That's Esau. The Lord have worked, but all of this from the what? The land of the north. So go back to Jeremiah chapter 51, and so we see verse 10. When verse 10 says, the Lord hath brought forth our righteousness. This is talking after what? After the event that we just read about would have happened. After us being, right now, what has he brought us? He's brought us the knowledge of salvation. He's brought us the great expectation and hope of being delivered. And then this hope has been accompanied in prophecies by all the signs of the events and the circumstances and the geopolitical situation that would surround our salvation drawing nearer, so that we could know what time it was prophetically. Esau have his own, see, Esau's doomsday, remember Esau got a doomsday clock, it's like 2 minutes, 1 minute, 30 seconds, something like that to midnight. Come on, that doomsday clock is doomed for him, but it's that very same doomsday clock is our deliverance clock. It's our salvation clock. He recognizes it. You gotta look up when you get time, write this in your notes. Study what is the doomsday clock, so that you can understand that which is the day of doom for him is the exact opposite for us. But he himself understands and has accepted, so much so that he's put out since the Cold War era the concept of the doomsday clock, and it is in reference to the annihilation of the Eurocentric civilization by their own hands by means of nuclear war. That's what the doomsday clock is about. And the Bible prophesies about it. The next verse don't say it. Let's jump on into verse 11. Verse 11 tells you what the doomsday. Jeremiah chapter 51 is about the doomsday clock, come to think of it. Read on down.
Jeremiah chapter 51 and verse 11. Make bright the arrows, gather the shields. The Lord hath raised up the spirit of the kings of the Medes.
Stop. The Medes, if you look on a biblical map, you're going to see the land of the Medes that's set just north of the land of the Persians. And today the equivalent, the land of the Medes is in the equivalent of the north of Iran. The land of the Persians is the southern portion of Iran. Just like in the ancient days, Iraq, you have the country Iraq, and the kingdom of Assyria would be northern Iraq today, and the kingdom of Babylon, ancient and Neo-Babylon, would be southern Iraq. So the Most High said he done stirred up the spirit of the Medes. And you hear about it all the time. You hear about how the United States are always, and Israel, the country Israel, the military base posing as a country in the Middle East called Israel, is constantly exercising executing strategies to stymie the development of Iran's nuclear energy program. Because Iran's nuclear energy program, which is being financed and set up and completely operated by the Russians, experts on nuclear energy, is not just a nuclear energy program. It's a nuclear weapons program posing as a nuclear energy program. Just like the United States medical program is really what? The United States Medical Foundation is literally a biological and chemical warfare entity posing as a medical field. That's why people die of not cancer, but cancer treatment. That's why people die of not diabetes, but treatment for diabetes. And all of the above. It's not about curing any damn thing. You know? So that's what this is. The most I said, I got the lead set up now. That's my water alarm, y'all. Hold on. I'll be dried out right in front of your eyes. You be like, damn, Kawakab is getting crazy. Then my voice keep getting scratchier. Now we know from here on it's a matter of minutes before I gotta use the restroom. Okay. So read verse 11 again from the top.
Jeremiah chapter 51 and verse 11. Make bright the arrows, gather the shields. The Lord hath raised up the spirit of the kings of the Medes, for his device is against Babylon, to destroy it, because it is the vengeance of the Lord, the vengeance of his temple.
So what is the Most High's temple? The Most High's temple is his people Israel. In other words, the place where the Spirit of the Most High resides, like it tells us in 1 Corinthians chapter 3, that what? That we are the temple of the Most High. It tells us all in the Old Testament, the Most High will walk in and among us. So he is going to destroy it. So the arrows represent the missiles. What do shields do? Like people will shoot arrows. You watch the old movies and they'll put the shields up. The shields today are the equivalent of missile defense. That stuff ain't gonna work. And let me say this. You all write these notes down and check it on your own time. There's an old documentary called Out of the Blue.
Out of the what?
Watch the whole thing. Huh?
Out of the loop?
Out of the blue.
Blue.
Like the color blue. And it's about the many times where UFOs have come to missile bases and destroyed missiles in their silos. Melted literally. You're going to see this. And of course, sometimes they do reenactments. Missile tests while the nuclear missile, without the nuclear payload. What happens is they perform tests that'll have a dummy payload because the nuclear warhead weighs so much. And so the missile has to have the type of boosting, the booster system, the how do you call it, the propelling system, and the boosters in different stages, where one set of rockets propel it to a certain level, it falls off, another set prepares it out of the atmosphere, it falls off, then it has a guidance system outside the atmosphere that guides it to the longitudinal and latitudinal area where it's the coordinates where it's programmed, and then it just drops and picks up that velocity coming back into the atmosphere. Bang! It breaks through, begins to be on fire. That's why when you see movies of the missiles coming through and they coming back in, they always look like a meteor or a comet, or like the Bible says, a star. That's the process that it's going through. So this documentary will do a reenactment of Esau doing his missile testing to make sure they can make the distance, and UFOs breaking out of nowhere. And the missile will be flying at Mach 5. I'm talking about hypersonic speeds. And the UFO will be flying around it as it's going, shooting lasers at it from every angle. Then it drops out the sky and the UFO takes off. Now, I watched that documentary like 10 years, long time ago. And that documentary helped me to understand how come the Bible don't say that Babylon is going to be firing back. We're going to read up. Once we finish Jeremiah chapter 51, we're going to start from scratch, and we're going to go through, you guys know my famous or infamous, depending on who's watching it, apocalyptic blitz series. We're going to start off at Daniel chapter 2 and take the trajectory, the prophetic trajectory in the scriptures. And we're going to go from chapter 2 to chapter 7, and from chapter 7 to books of Revelation, and come on back to 2nd Ezra. We're going to do the whole thing. And you're going to see there's nowhere in the scriptures prophesied about how America is going to be in a position to fight back. Nowhere. It's all attack. So when I saw that documentary, I said, oh, now I understand why. The Most High don't ever speak of an exchange. He speak of an overthrow. He speak of an invasion. He speak of a collapse. And then he speak that what? That it never rises again. Ultimate annihilation, and that it never rises again. So here, this is talking about an offensive attack, where the Medes, who are the Iranians today. Now, how do we know we can rely on that? Because when you read Ezekiel chapter 38, the first country that's mentioned that's going to be protected and in Gog and Magog, meaning Russia and the leader of Russia's military, it says is Persia. So they can give you all this malarkey all they want on the news about how Persia or how Iran doesn't have nukes and that they're being limited. No, they got the nukes, they're just sitting on top of them. Let me put it like this: if they don't have them by the time the Lord is ready for all the countries to fire on Babylon, they will have them. Read on down, brother. Verse 12.
Jeremiah chapter 51, verse 12. Set up the standard upon the walls of Babylon. Make the watch strong. Set up the watchmen. Prepare the ambushes. For the Lord hath both devised and done that which he spake against the inhabitants of Babylon.
Hold on. What verse you at?
That was 12.
That was verse 12. So, okay, once again, set up the standard upon the walls of Babylon, make the watch strong. No, boy, this is talking about, now have anybody heard, I saw today a compilation, a video that was a compilation of not maybe all, but many of the achievements that Donald Trump has done in these last 4 years while under constant fire since even before he was inaugurated, constant one scandal after the other, never being reported in the news any of his positive achievements. But the theme, you guys can look this up, I want you to see it. Look up Donald Trump compilation, and the title should be called Promises Kept, or Promise Made, Promises Kept. And then you're going to see, and within those promises, one of the things that he claimed, or he promised that he would do, is we're going to build up our military again. That's what this verse is talking about. It's talking about an effort to reconstitute America's military preeminence. It says, set up the standard upon the walls of Babylon. What's that? That's talking about the people, the entity, the demographic of the Babylonian society, whose obligation, whose job it is to protect Babylon. That's the military and all branches of it. It's talking about the intelligence community. It's talking about all of the foreign and domestic apparatuses that are designed to detect and circumvent all plots against the United States of America. Now what it means when it says set up a standard and watch me. It ain't just talking about military with guns, it's talking about all apparatuses designed to what? To prevent the fall of this country. Set up the standard upon the walls of Babylon. Make the watch strong. Set up the watchmen. Prepare the ambushes. For the Lord hath both devised and done. Most High said this is a done deal. It's a prophecy. It ain't just, and he just said, it's matter of fact, let me put it like this. What are we looking at? What are we witnessing right now? What we're witnessing right now are, I would say, social and corporate overthrows. Social and corporate invasion.
Shalom.
corporate and social invasion. We're in Jeremiah chapter 51, brother, and we're at verse 12, all right? And we're streaming on YouTube now. So,
What?
no, what? You on somebody's most wanted list? Don't be. Yeah, you see his name. We got the what? Is it me, or did everybody see that face? So we're in Jeremiah chapter 51. The brothers was reading. We pick it up now. We're reading about the invasion of America, biblically Babylon, and we're going to hit some precepts up pretty soon. Like for instance, in the book of Nahum. Let's go to Nahum real quick. But before you read Nahum, I want you to finish reading verses 12 through 14. Chapter 51, verse 12 through 14.
Jeremiah 51 and verse 12. Set up the standard upon the walls of Babylon. Make the watch strong. Set up the watchmen. Prepare the ambushes. For the Lord hath both devised and done that which he spake against the inhabitants of Babylon.
Go ahead.
O thou that dwellest upon many waters, abundant in treasures, thine end is come, and the measure of thy covetousness.
Listen to this. So thy end is come. O thou that dwellest upon many waters. People will take this verse, talking about Christians and people that's into the prophetic, that are non-Israelites, nations, and they still can equivalent this to America. And they'll say upon many waters, and they'll say it's because it sits between the Pacific and the Atlantic. Well, if that's what you're going to use, damn it, Africa sits between the Atlantic and the Indian Ocean. They ain't talking, the many waters refer to the person the nation that governs many nations. Remember, it breaks that down in Revelation chapter 17. The woman that sat upon many waters, and the many waters represents peoples, tongues, and nations and kingdoms. So this is the kingdom. Look at all the measures that have been taken and been pushed, where America's the spearhead of everybody's doing. How is every nation combating this fictitious COVID threat? They're combating the fictitious COVID threat based on what Dr. Idiot Anthony Fauci says. Think about that. And if not him, then what do they refer to? They refer to the CDC, the Center for Disease Control. And then, in other words, what? This country, this kingdom is the one who everyone is leading. I was watching years ago in what that movie, the first one with Will Smith, Independence Day. When the aliens came down and destroyed everybody, the drunk dude had been telling, I've been saying it for 10 damn years. I been saying it? I don't know if y'all remember Will Smith in that movie, Independence Day. Well, when they finally decided they was going to take the aliens down, what happened? I'm using this as an example to show you they even put it in the movies that it is expected that the United States of America will always come up with the remedy that the world will follow to deliver itself from whatever danger. Imagined or real. Fictitious or real. And so when they decided to what? To do the so-called putting a virus in the UFO. Are you there? What's up on the other side? Is that you?
Yeah, sir.
Okay. Putting a virus in the UFO, never mind that you can't even get Mac and Windows things to be compatible, right? You got a Mac on Earth, you can't even make it compatible with Windows, but they're going to take some virus and make it compatible with an alien technology. But once they got on the phone and it worked, what did they say? The Americans have an idea. They showed a clip of a British soldier working with the Pakistanis or the Egyptians. The Americans finally have a strategy. Well, it's about time. So everybody was sitting around getting their ass whooped by the aliens, waiting for the United States to come up with a battle plan. Some of y'all saw that. The Americans have a plan, Mike. It's about time. And that's the truth. So now that dwellest upon many waters is in reference to the control that they have over the nation. It is in reference to the economic control. Let's talk about that. That's why all of the world's, especially petroleum, a few other things, have to be purchased in dollars. It's called the petrodollar. And nations, America or the United States, or we'll call it, how do they call it? The international reserve currency. The currency in which international commerce is executed is in dollars. Just like before World War I and World War II, the same thing was done. Nation was always exercising business and commerce, but the international monetary reserve currency was the British sterling. And then they fell from that position between the transition of World War I and World War II. And then you guys can look up Bretton Woods. Bretton Woods was the meeting in which the United States, the US dollar, was made the international reserve currency after World War II. So that's one way in which the United States governs the world. So you're over in Iran, you got oil to sell, the nation have to buy your oil in dollars. And anybody says, I want to buy some Iranian oil for some, whatever a foreign currency is, they get attacked. That's what happened with Saddam Hussein. He put his petroleum on the global market for currencies other than the US dollar, and it was the euro. Well, they had to take his ass out. And every head of state that's done that meets a similar end. That's one way in which he governs, sits upon many waters. Then let's say you decide to go and exercise or perform commerce in spite of the warning. What will the United States do? They put a sanction on you. And a sanction is now, it is an international law that you cannot buy or sell or do any commerce, for instance, with Cuba. And if you decide, I'm going to buy some Cuban goods anyway, then what happens? Or some Russian or Iranian or North Korean goods anyway, then what happens? If you break a sanction, you go to try to deliver that product, what happens? Brother, they set up what you call a blockade. They literally have military ships waiting outside international waters, just outside the place where the country is waiting to receive the goods. And that's what happens, and that's what goes down now. So that there's an economic stronghold that the United States has in the world that's enforced by a military stronghold. Then you have what you call a social or an ideological stronghold. We'll call it political, because why? Because I shouldn't say because why, because they're the devil. But how is that manifested? It's manifested in the form of them constantly pushing the need for the main government, or the main form of governance, to be a democracy. And the Bible don't say anything about a democracy. The Bible talks about monarchies. Christ ain't coming back to set up a democracy. Christ is coming back to set up a global, intergalactic dictatorship. Literally. So why would I be fighting and trying to make America great again when that ain't what the Most High wants? That's not, even the American Christians ain't reading the Bible. And this is not about being anti-America as much as about being pro-Bible. Because, hey, listen, you're going to keep laughing and joking at what's going on. My Walla, you got some jokes for me, brother?
No,
I can use a laugh. I'm reading all of these. I'm reading about doom and gloom, and I can use a good laugh. Drop it on me.
That's the
Let's
joke,
get serious
man.
in class, man. Let's keep this.
Yeah,
I haven't seen the brother. I forgot the brother's name again. That you're talking to. Say his name. Don't hold me now. I haven't seen you a while in class, so when he does come back, we don't expect for him to be distracted by a young officer or soldier laughing and joking with him in class. Y'all got to get serious about this. Let me say this. Do you guys realize if we're not right before the Most High, we're going to be starving to death? We have to, we're reading right now about what remains, however long we got in this race towards salvation, however many months, days, and years, we are approaching a finish line that is going to have an obstacle of many potential deaths. One of them is starvation. One of them is dying in the street by the sword. The other one is the potential loss and destruction of your eternal soul for having taken the mark. Whatever it turns out that it's going to concretely be, we have to confront that. So this ain't the time. It's time for y'all to get your mentality right. It's time for you guys to exercise your soldiership right. It's time for you guys to understand this is about your life. This is about the preservation and salvation or the destruction and eternal condemnation of your soul. So let's give the Most High and the dynamic that we're involved in the respect that it requires. The Most High ain't playing, brother. And so I'm going to be, and then we're live streaming. You guys have this new system where you're live streaming. That's the image you're trying to promote to the world. Come to the school so we can be having class and telling jokes like we used to do in church, because that's what we used to do in church. The preachers will be up there talking, I'll be in the balcony with my boys having a good time telling jokes, looking at the women to catch the Holy Spirit. We can call it the unholy spirit now that we know the truth. we gotta be right. So I'm gonna this out. What verse are we at?
We're on Jeremiah 51 and verse 14.
Okay, and when you read 13, I was explaining the many ways when it says, "O thou that dwellest upon many waters." What does that mean? It's not talking about geographically you're between the Pacific and the Atlantic Ocean, because then Africa's between the Atlantic and the Indian Ocean. You know, Asia's between the Pacific and the Indian Ocean. It's talking about the governance over many kingdoms and tongues and peoples and languages. And so we were going through the financial aspect. We were going through the military aspect, which is there to enforce the financial dominance. And then I was getting ready to get into what's the cultural and social and political and ideological dominance. And the example that I was using was the form of government. Every time they want to go and steal resources from another country, they go under the pretext of it's a dictatorship. It's a theological dictatorship, meaning, you know, the Muslims are cruel to their women. Well, Esau got women over here being kidnapped and put into sex slavery, but he gonna go, there's 100 women over in Iran that gotta wear black all day. What the hell is he talking about? So he creates these pretexts, and then the false pretext is to go up and set up what? His form of government. You have to be voted. You have to be called president. There has to be an opposition. Any oppositions in Christ's kingdom are going to be decimated. Most I ain't coming to bring no democracy. Ain't nobody be having no illiterate niggas with purple thumbs because they had to vote with their fingers. This is all the stuff America been pushing for decades now. People on TV, concrete people showing with a purple ink thumb. I voted today. Voted for a puppet that the United States set up that would end up what? Turning over the country's resources. That's what this means when it says that sitteth upon many waters. Let's get the precept real quick to that. Go to Revelation chapter 17. We'll come back. We're gonna come back to name of Amayetas. Let me mark my spot here. Revelation chapter 17. What do we want to get? We want to properly and scripturally define what it means when it says America or Babylon sits upon many waters. So we're in chapter 17, and let me see the best way to go about this. Let me see. Well, I'm in chapter 17. I'm skimming through verse 1 through verse 3 through verse 4 through verse 6. I'm looking for the. Oh, hold on. Here we go. I think. Where is the? Is it me? Or let me get to the end of it. I'm probably in the wrong. I'm probably in the wrong. Let me see chapter 18. The definition. All right, y'all. Y'all help me. Hold on. I'm looking for the verse where it tells you the woman that sat upon many waters. Because you got a lot of people that's in the prophecy that we talking about. It's the Statue of Liberty.
Come.
Huh?
No, I'm looking for which.
Yeah. I hate posing in class, so I might have looked.
No, it's Revelation 17 and
Is it
1.
verse 1?
Let me in what in chapter 17?
Yeah, the whore
Yeah,
upon
that's
many
what.
waters.
Okay, yeah, okay, then I'm overlooking it. Well, that's what I want that, but hold on.
It says the whore that sitteth upon many waters.
It's chapter 1, hold on. It's chapter 1, I'm sorry, chapter 17. I want you to read verse 1 and 2, and then I want to go and get what the definition of that is. And so, and so you're going to jump down to verse 15. So you're going to read Revelation chapter 17, verse 1 and 2, and then we're going to jump down to verse 15. Why? So that we can understand what does the many waters that this woman sit upon represent. All right?
Okay.
And then we'll know that that's what it's talking about in Jeremiah chapter 51 and verse 13. Okay, go ahead and read that, Amayatazar.
Revelation 17 and verse 1. And there came one of the 7 angels which had the 7 vials, and talked with me, saying unto me, Come hither, I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters.
Right, the great whore that sitteth upon many waters. Now it's called the whore here. Later on in this very same chapter, it is referred to as Babylon the Great. Continue, verse 2.
Verse 2. With whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication.
Now, biblically speaking, what does that mean? The kings of the earth have committed fornication. That means all the nations are what? Participating with her, with this whore, in what? In her activity of iniquity. It says, and all of what? And the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of the fornication. That means everyone is under her influence. So when you look at when people be talking about democracy, that's being pushed by America. And then along with America, or along with the democracy, is supposed to be freedom. So the freedom to change your sexual orientation is promoted from America. Other nations, they might announce it, but only because the United States have made it that an element among global human rights. The right for you to cut your genitals off, or to get a genital tattoo and call yourself. You guys understand the whole transgender movement. I'm using that as an example to show how when it says all the earth has been made drunk with the wine of her fornication, the world is under. And we read that in Jeremiah in chapter 51, where it says, or maybe we're going to get to it. Jeremiah, it says, the Babylon has been a golden cup in the hand of the Lord, which made all the earth to drink of her wine. Therefore are the nations mad, meaning all the nations are insane now, following the policies, adopting the practices. So this is what it means to govern people now. Jump down to verse 15 so we can understand what are the many waters.
And he saith unto me, The waters which thou sawest where the horse sitteth are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues.
Yeah. Read it one more time, and then let's go back to Jeremiah.
And he saith unto me, the waters which thou sawest, where the horse sitteth, are peoples, and multitudes, and nations, and tongues.
So this is when it says people, meaning what? It's talking about all the people in great numbers, that's what multitudes are, and nations, meaning in all the countries, and tongues, meaning in all the various languages that the countries can be found in. That's what that's talking about. You understand? So let's go back to Jeremiah and read that verse again. I'm going to get to that verse 13.
Jeremiah 51 and verse 13. O thou that dwellest upon many waters, abundant in treasures, thine end.
Stop. Abundant in treasure. So that's talking about, now well, let me ask you this. What nation, how many times have you heard Iran or China or even England or France or any other European country being touted as the world's most richest nation? You don't hear that, not in our lifetime. And maybe they said that back in the Victorian era about England. Maybe they said that of France during the Napoleonic Wars. But in our time, what have we heard over and over in movies and in speeches, political speeches, America being the world's most powerful economic and military country? That's why it says abundant in treasure. And in this era, in this country, in this kingdom, in this empire, is found what? The control of all commercial activity. And that's why it was, let me say, that's the importance, the significance of Donald Trump having been declared the winner of a what with China? Of a trade war. The trade war wasn't about who traded, what? The trade war was about all the trade and commerce going on between China and the United States and the United States and anywhere else. Whose country receives more money from a consumer, a global consumer demographic? Would China be receiving more money, or would the United States be receiving more money? And Donald Trump procured an agreement that put the United States back in the advantage of being able to have more of its product, more of its treasures being what? Sold, being available to the global and the American, first and foremost, consumer demographic. And everybody knows, you can read any statistics as far as petroleum, all forms of energy, food. Yeah, I mean, I think broke out a couple of nights ago. I don't know if it was in this class or another class where you broke out about how all the food that how many 80-something tons or 1,000 tons of food that the United States, the consumers waste, that they throw away. And so that's what it means when it says abundance and treasure. Remember, them planes flew into not the New York Trade Center, but the World Trade Center. Because that's where all trade, and the valuable things and the coveted merchandise of the earth is sold here. Well, I say there actually. I mean, what Guatemala ain't nothing sold here but coffee and bananas, chocolate. Anyway, go back on finish verse 13.
O thou that dwellest upon many waters, abundant in treasures, thine end is come, and the measure of thy covetousness.
Thine end is come, and the measure of thy covetousness. Now, when it says covetousness, we understand one of the 10 commandments is thou shalt not covet anything that is thy neighbor. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's manservant, thy neighbor's maidservant, thy neighbor's ox, thy neighbor's ass, or anything that is thy neighbor's. So what does it mean to be covetous? It means to desire something that someone else has. Recently, and I say recently meaning from the time of 2002. I almost started with 2002 concerning Venezuela, because that was when the first official CIA-sponsored coup attempt was made on that country, and it failed. And since then, guess what happened? Venezuela had all of its nation's gold in the reserves in England, where a lot of other countries have also. They asked that their gold be repatriated to their country, and guess what happened? Britain and the rest of the world said, hell no. That's why you keep your gold at home. What the hell you gonna do? You gonna let me keep your car? Do I get your gold watch? Do I get your TV? You keep your goods at home, and that's in the Bible. Most times say you don't even turn over your wealth to your children or your women until you get ready to die. That's in Ecclesiastes chapter 33, something like that. It says, keep the preeminence in your life. But it shows you, they coveted that country's gold, just like they coveted that country's petroleum. They coveted Iraq's petroleum. They made a movie called Three Kings with Ice Cube, George Clooney, and some other dude. And it was about how during the first Iraq invasion, what took place? Saddam Hussein's gold was stolen. And they got soldiers. You go look this up. I mean, yeah, you might put some pictures in the thing if you find it. Soldiers them stumbled across Iraq's gold reserves and literally sitting in trucks taking pictures with it. So when it says, thy end is come and the measure of thy covetousness, meaning now I'm going to what? Cut you off from all the covetousness you've done. You've always what? Desired. You desired that which belonged to the nations. Then you set out false plans to execute stealing their goods under false pretenses. So the Most High, and that is a whole, just to break that verse down. Let's go there. What are you talking about? That's what we're here for. We got until Christ comes back. Now it could be tomorrow, or it could be next. We don't know. So let's break it down. Go from there. That in reference to this last verse, or this last section of verse 13, thine end is come and the measure of thy covetousness. I'm going to use the restroom. I want you to go to Habakkuk chapter 2, and when I get back, we're going to start off at Habakkuk chapter 2 and verse 5. All right? And we're going to show prophecies also about the covetousness and what would happen as a result of this kingdom, of this empire, having coveted all nations' resources and all nations' people. I'll be right back.
Can you guys in the school allow me to share stuff, please?
Is that possible? That would have to be to enable the mechanism.
Try,
Hey, Dawiyad.
Hey, Shalom, man. What was good, bro?
Shalom, bro. I really enjoyed the class you guys had at the beginning of the week on color
I was
system.
telling him that. See, Dariad, I told you.
Oh, I'm glad y'all enjoyed it.
That was a really powerful class, man. Literally, I've listened to it every day on my commute to work this morning. This week, sorry. Really powerful.
I'm glad y'all enjoyed it, bro, because, we're trying to bring fire for, the healing of the people, bro, and ourselves, too. So I'm glad you enjoyed it, bro. We're trying to be relevant as far as, issues that matter to your spirit, bro.
Yeah.
Kraza.
That's cute.
Yeah, I see him.
Wow, I haven't seen you in what decade?
Yeah.
Shalom.
That's the homie, man.
Bro. Good to see you.
Good to see you, my brother.
Why? Oh my gosh, you're so much older now. Yeah, because it was 2009, which was 11 years ago.
Yeah.
My goodness.
Yeah, man. Good to see you, man. You looking good, man. You looking healthy, bro.
Hey, thank you. I'm looking old.
Hey, that's that wisdom right there, man. That's wisdom.
Hey, I like to tell myself that to make me feel better.
You got to, You got to, bro. You got to.
Bro, now
I'm just happy to see y'all brothers, man. I'm just happy to see you. I'm just enjoying this class, man. I'm feeling it. You know what I'm saying? All the brothers in the class, shalom.
Hey, shalom, man.
Shalom, brother.
But shalom.
It's been a minute, bro. Shalom, man.
Are you back in San Antonio, or are you in New Orleans?
I'm back in San Antonio.
Okay, that's cool. That's good.
Yeah. I was listening the whole time, man. I didn't even want to show my face, but I've been listening the whole time.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, man. So I'm in the book, man.
That's good. If I'd realized we was gonna be live streaming, I'll look in early. My bad.
Yeah, man. It's been like 10 years, man. I think at the old school on I think that was Zazamori Dariat, the last.
It was on
my brother.
5 years ago on Parent Bottom. It was
Yeah,
5 years ago on
yeah.
Parent Bottom.
No, I'm talking about Karakazai.
Oh,
I mean, the brother.
that's like 10 years ago, bro. 10 years ago, right?
Yeah, I think that was like the old school, man.
Yeah, it was.
That was Guadalupe.
Like 10 years.
That was Guadalupe.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's been a while, bro.
For real.
Hey,
I'm happy to see. Man, where you at now? You in London?
Yeah, I'm in London. I'm in
Okay.
London.
How it is out there, man? Is it crazy out there?
Yeah, like I think this COVID thing has got a lot of people scared, and so they're trying to get back to normal. But I think we are. What's been surprising is that a lot of people return back to work this week. So what you're finding is, obviously the streets are busier, public transport is busier, but there hasn't been a spike in COVID cases, which has really got people questioning, hold on, what's going on here? We expected there to be a spike. You've been telling us about a second wave, but there really hasn't been. And so, yeah, people starting to ask questions, but they're still probably going to tell us there's a second wave. But yeah, it's crazy. But life it's not as mad as America. Like America just appears to be falling with all these videos that we're seeing of protests and shooting. It just looks like a lawless country right now.
Right. Wow, that's crazy, man. And now they talking about the vaccine. They doing it now, man. They giving people the vaccine right now, man. So that's what's they pushing that more out here in United States, man. So, but yeah, man, it's crazy, man.
Hey, we can't
targeted video, man.
we can't get these articles yet. Yeah.
Hey, Shalom. Hey,
Shalom.
How you doing?
You still haven't shared it to me.
Yeah, we can't share it yet, bro, because we're rookies at this stream stuff, bro. We gotta figure it out by probably next week, bro. I ain't gonna lie, cause I don't want to cut it off.
That's a part that I see over there.
Yeah, that's Tyler Pine in the back. What's going on?
I'm Tyler Pop.
Shalom, man.
How you doing, man?
I'm too wild, brother. How you doing?
Brother, I'm fighting, brother. This dynamic is keeping me fighting. Believe me.
God.
Okay.
I can't share, Drew. Should we just continue then?
Okay, we'll continue, and then they can work out that. You know how the technology is. I don't know. It's all confusing to me. At least I think the stream is going out, so that's good enough. Okay. We're getting ready to go into Habakkuk chapter 2. I'm sorry, Habakkuk chapter 2, and starting off at verse 5. And in reference to that last section in Jeremiah chapter 51 and verse 13, where it says, "Thine end is come, and the measure of thy covetousness." Let's go read a little bit about the measure of the covetousness of this empire that we're in the last days of. Go ahead, Amiyah, start off at verse 5.
Yea, also, because he transgresseth by wine, he is a proud man.
Stop.
Neither.
How do we know we're reading about the same entity? Because in Revelation chapter 17, we just read that what? That the woman that sat upon many waters, it says that all the kings of the earth fornicated with her, and that all the inhabitants of the earth had been made drunk with what? With the wine of her fornication. We read in, I believe it's this chapter. I could be wrong. Maybe we already read it. Or it's back in chapter 50 of Jeremiah. where it says, let me see if I can find it. I guess not. I have to find it. It says Babylon is a golden cup in the hand of the Lord.
Kyle, we'll get it.
You guys know what that verse is? I believe. Anyway, if it's in this chapter, we'll get to it. If it is in the previous chapter that we already went, then you guys can refer to it.
Yeah, that's Jeremiah 51 and 7.
Babylon, a verse that says Babylon has been a cup. No, it's verse 7.
Verse 7.
Babylon has been a golden cup in the hand of the Lord that made all the earth drunken. The nations have drunken of her wine. There you go. And therefore are the nations mad, meaning the nations have gone crazy because they've received her influence. So, in Habakkuk chapter 2 and verse 5, it says, because he transgresseth by wine. What does that mean? His principal strategy of evil is to influence people to his policy. That's why when you read in the book of Daniel, it says that he shall cause his policy and craft to prosper. And so he influenced people. Well, you got to be a bad dude to make women feel free. You have to be a bad dude to make women feel free in relinquishing the one most important thing for which the Most High put them on the earth, and that's to keep humans in. Think about that. Because the Most High said it's not good that man should be alone. And he wasn't talking about just, companionship. How else would the human race continue to procreate without the woman? Think about that. So he done took the one thing that she's the most powerful in, and it's the most important contribution to our species, right? The human species, because without her, life will end. Now, don't get me wrong. The same can be said about the man if the woman was here and there was no man. But the point I'm making is he had taken her and made her feel powerful in relinquishing, in forfeiting that superpower of being the vessel through whom all life comes. Think about that. And it's called abortion. And they'll tell you, damn it, my body, my choice. And you know what? If you was talking about your guts, your liver, your spleen, your heart, you want to cut that out, be my guest. But once a man puts his seed in you, that's not yours. That's not yours to relinquish. That's the posterity of another man. So here the Most High is showing us Esau, all he did was give this woman spirit, wine, influenced her to make her think the most powerful thing you can do is forfeit the purpose for which you were brought into this earth. And they'll tell you, I feel empowered. And you see people going around, come out of abortion because, I just killed my baby. Now that's why it says he transgressed by wine. Meaning he take his knowledge and he influenced people to do his evil and feel upright and powerful by doing it. That's what he's talking about. Continue on, Yeshua. Therefore, because he transgressed by wine, he is a proud man. Go ahead.
Never keepeth at home, who enlargeth his desire as hell.
Stop.
And is
We're going to break this down little by little because what? We're trying to figure out what is the measure of his covetousness. It says he never keepeth at home. And this is what Esau been doing from his first empire. His first empire sprang out of the Grecian city-states. And while they show you in the movie, this beast called the Persian Empire was encroaching them, and all they were doing was fighting for freedom, those very same Greeks will go on to what? Conquer the entire known world in 12 years under Alexander. You understand? No, they never kept at home. Never. Think about that. Then came the Romans. And then the Romans began to what? Go beyond its borders. And they've been doing it ever since the Renaissance. Constantly creating, now, you know, the demographic, or we should say the strategy that's implemented now is always some false pretense justifying nothing more than imperialism. At least the Greeks said we're doing it because we can. At least the Romans said we're doing this because we can. The Brits came back and said we're bloody hell doing it because we can, Mike. But the Americans said, no, these people are being oppressed over here. And over there, they won't let women wear bikinis. And over there, he never keep it at home. Go ahead on the other side. It says he enlarged his desire, continue.
He enlargeth his desire as hell.
Stop right there. That means what? Well, we finish that concept. He enlarged his desire as hell.
And is as death.
And is as death. That means wherever his desire is, like he wanted Saddam Hussein to go and destroy you. So when he got there, what followed? What did he tell the world? He said Saddam Hussein got weapons of mass destruction, and they already used their poison gas on 300 of their own people in the north. 300? How many did the United States kill getting there? You know the sanctions with the first invasion of Kuwait, they used Kuwait as a platform to invade Iraq. Kuwait used to belong to Iraq. And that you want me next time?
No, it's not me.
I got it. There you go. I got it. It's taken care of.
Okay. So, he used Kuwait as that platform to invade Iraq. And from the time of that in 1991, Desert Storm, up until the time of the closing of the the Clinton presidency, within a 10-year period, he implemented sanctions against Iraq that resulted in the death of 500,000 people, the majority of them children, dying of curable diseases like dysentery and diarrhea and stuff like that. You guys can go look this up, where he enforced a no-fly zone over the 32nd parallel. That was some spiritual stuff right there. All that the different latitudes and longitudinal sites of the globe that he protects and invades and defends against people encroaching upon. So this is what this dude been doing. So you guys know what a desire is. Desire is you want something. So when he enlarges his desire, it says it's death, because death touches everybody. He enlarges his desire and is as death. His desire is enlarged as hell. Now what does that mean? Hell are the conditions, the intolerable conditions on earth that persons, nations, households suffer. So when he goes, and look what happened. We got all of these cities. You can go get pictures of before and after. Look at Baghdad before and Baghdad after the U.S. invasion. Yes, brother.
Go ahead, talk about.
Hey, does that Habakkuk scripture go with
Okay,
Revelation?
whoever that is, you're muffled. You have to come to the front so I can hear you.
Does that Habakkuk
Well, that's
go
what
with
I couldn't even hear you. Yeah, once you get past the brother Mawala, then the sound gets really cloudy or muffled.
Does that Habakkuk go with Revelation 6 and 8?
You gotta come on. This microphone on this thing is probably unidirectional, because I can hear you, but not good.
I said, does that Habakkuk chapter 2 go with Revelation 6 and 8?
Revelation chapter 6 and 8, is that about one of the horses?
The pale horse, hell followed with
The
him?
pale horse and the point, that's exactly what it's talking about.
Come.
And it says, and the body was death,
Hell following with
close
him.
behind.
That's the one.
Something, yeah, that's him, and that's what we read about. You know, thank you, brother, for bringing that up. The very same, because people keep talking about the 4 horsemen, right? But that's what this is talking about. Of those 4 horsemen, Esau is 2 of them. People don't get that. The red horse is talking about Esau in its early empire days, the Greeks and the Romans, up until the fall. The pale horse is talking about them coming back, emerging from the Renaissance. So we'll go, of course, and that's some of the things that we're going to be covering. And once we get through this Jeremiah, we're going to be covering the whole, we're going to start off with the whole apocalyptic episode, because those are the times we're living in now. Brother was online just now in the Zoom room talking about the vaccines, man, being pushed. I don't know where he was listening from, but I would like to know what state he was in and where he's, you know, the point is.
San Antonio.
So, okay, he's in San Antonio also. This supposedly out here, I shouldn't say supposedly, because the president of Guatemala, as soon a couple of weeks ago on a Monday when Russia announced that they finally had developed a vaccine and everything, the president of Guatemala petitioned the Russian president to be put on a priority list to receive the vaccines for Guatemala. Then he went on to petition England's prime minister and Brazil's president for the same. Then he made it known to all of the people of Guatemala that they're going to start doing forced or mandatory vaccinations in the first trimester of the year coming. So that means between January and April, they plan on shooting everybody up. So our battle is right before us. Yes, Amiyaki.
It's past 9:45.
Say that again?
It's past 9:45.
It's past 9:45. You guys make a note. I'm expecting you to do this. Because he's letting me know, because at 9:45 we're going to go now, break and continue our reading in the book Open Veins of Latin America.
So the Arakaya.
Huh? She let us know too?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you, brother and sister. Okay, so this is what we're doing. Make a note. We're in Jeremiah chapter 51, verse 13. We're breaking down the last precept of that verse using Habakkuk chapter 2, verses 5 through 17. All right? Now, you guys know that we're involved in our reading. The book is Open Veins of Latin America, and we're reading this book as an exhaustive study on the manifestation or the fulfillment of the curses of Deuteronomy chapter 28. Let me say that again. We're involved in the reading of a book, a historical book, that was finished and published in 1971, called Open Veins of the Open Veins of Latin America. There you go, brother. Yeah, and it was originally it's a Spanish text by a Chilean. I think he's Chilean. Or Uruguay. I'm not sure where. I can't remember where Eduardo Galeano is from. But the intention, the objective, is to acquire a greater ability to break down Deuteronomy chapter 28, targeting the so-called Latin American families. That's why it says the open veins of Latin America. But know that whatever we read, it is expose on the detail and the depth, or in detail, on the depth to which the curses of Deuteronomy chapter 28 were fulfilled, and then that knowledge and that's in-depth study of the dynamic of the colonialism executed in Latin America is a microcosm of how it was executed all over the world where Israel is. The same thing happened in North America. The same thing happened in the countries of Africa where we were scattered. The same thing happened in the Indonesian countries and the Polynesian and Micronesian countries. Happened in Oceania. So it's really a microcosm with the intention of helping us to understand globally how the wrath of the Most High fell upon us. But it's going to help us execute the bringing in and teaching of the brothers and sisters that come from that demographic, Latin America, because you can't just use Deuteronomy and help. And we've been doing it, but you have to use the tool that is Deuteronomy 28. That the verses that more impact the kingdom of Judah, then you got to go in and do the same thing with the kingdom of Israel tribes and understand the history that goes with those verses. And so that's what we're doing. Because remember, until Christ comes back, that's always going to be the main bread and butter chapter to wake the tribes up. Y'all know that. So let's go ahead and get down into this. We left off, we read the introduction last week, and we were actually getting ready to start part 1, where it says, lust for gold, lust for silver. So, how are we going to do this? We're going to, I hope I didn't just erase it. Let me see, I think I did. Okay. This is what we're going to do. I'm going to read 2 paragraphs. Yaktazah is going to read 2 paragraphs. Yakia, I said Yaktazah first. Listen to the order. Then Yaktazah, myself, Yaktazah, Yakia, Yahweh, I think, I'm drawing a blank now. The sister that Tazapah's rib that just wrote. Arakaya, because is she in the chat room?
Khan, I'm here, but I'd like to humbly pass the torch to Tazapah. I said I'd like to humbly pass this torch to Tazapah because he has the book. I don't have it right now.
Then Tazapah, you do that, and I need it. You have the book with you, Tazapah?
Khan, I got it.
Khan.
You brought it with you?
Khan.
Okay, so if you could bring your chair where you are to right between the 2 brothers that are behind Amayapia and Hector. Like right between them, so that you don't have to, every time it's your turn, to keep on getting up. And I say that so that we'll understand the order of reading. We're going to deal with 5 readers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's going to be myself, then Yaktazah, then Amayapia, then Yahweh, then Tazapah. Once Tazapah finishes 2, and everybody's going to read 2 paragraphs, no matter how big or small they are. You know, sometimes you're going to come up short, sometimes you're going to be exhausted. Either way, we'll know the trajectory of it so it can flow. All right? Yeah, we're on lust for gold, lust for silver. Okay, y'all let me know when you're ready and I'm gonna start. And of course, we'll be breaking away, me explaining some things, and if anyone has any questions, you have to raise your hands. Now, right now, I'm looking at the book, so I can't see the congregation. So if somebody raises their hand and I don't respond, then that means that speak out. I have a question or whatever. Someone has a comment. Because we're not just reading through this, we're actually reading through this like the Bible. The goal is to understand what's being shared, okay? So let me know when you're ready.
We're ready.
Okay, so part 1, it says lust for gold, lust for silver, and the subtitle is the sign of the cross on the hilt of the sword. The hilt of the sword is, back in the old days, you had a saber type of sword, and it had something, a handle that the palm was covered. On that covering of the palm, like if you ever seen the old movies of them fencing, it'll have like you said, it'll have a covering for the knuckles and stuff. That is the hilt, and they used to have crosses on the hilts of their swords, just so that you know. So the sign of the cross on the hilt of the sword, it says when Christopher Columbus headed across the great emptiness west of Christendom, he accepted the challenge of legend. Terrible storms would play with his ships as if they were nutshells and hurl them into the jaws of monsters. The sea serpent, hungry for you. Listen, now they say legends, but we know there is a sea serpent. They knew about the sea serpent. The Bible calls him Leviathan, right? So these were the things that for years kept the Europeans from leaving and going too far overseas. It says, the sea serpent, hungry for human flesh, would be lying in wait in the murky depths. According to 15th century man, only 1,000 years remain before the purifying flames of the last judgment would destroy the world. So it shows you during that time, they've been waiting. Now that's cool because they said according to the 15th century, they expected 1,000 more years before Judgment Day, which means in their minds it was supposed to happen in the year, what's 1,500 plus 1,000 would be the year 2,500. Anyway, we continue. I'm going to read that part again. According to 15th century man, 15th century man is the 1400s. Only 1,000 years remain before the purifying flames of the last judgment would destroy the world. And the world was then the Mediterranean Sea with its uncertain horizons, Europe, Africa, Asia. Portuguese navigators spoke of strange corpses and curiously carved pieces of wood that floated in on the west wind. But no one suspected that the world was about to be startlingly extended by a great new land, talking about the Americas. America, scroll down. America not only lacked a name, the Norwegians did not know they had discovered it long ago. And Columbus himself died convinced that he had reached Asia by the western route. In 1492, when Spanish boats first trod the beaches of the Bahamas, the admiral, referring to Christopher Columbus, thought these islands were an outpost of the fabulous Isle of Zipango, Japan. Columbus took along a copy of Marco Polo's book and covered its margins with notes. The inhabitants of Zipango, said Marco Polo, have gold in the greatest abundance, its sources being inexhaustible. In this island, there are pearls also, in large quantities, of a red color, round in shape, let me go to scroll, and of, I gotta make my screen smaller so I can see how this thing goes. Huh? That's too small. Well, let me see. No, you read that. That's too small for me. Hold on. Y'all forgive me, man. I'm on this computer. What the hell? Now I gotta make the screen smaller. Hold up. I gotta see where, when I try to change the page. Okay, here we go. Let me read that last thing again. The last line. Y'all being blind ain't fun. The only thing I need now to be able to sing the blues. In this island, there are pearls also in large quantities of a red color, round in shape, and of great size, equal in value to, or even exceeding that of white pearls. The wealth of Zipango had become known to the great Kublai Khan, stirring a desire to conquer it. But he had failed. Out of Marco Polo's sparkling pages leapt all the good things of creation. There were nearly 13,000 islands in the Indian seas, with mountains of gold and pearls and 12 kinds of spices in enormous quantities, in addition to an abundance of white and black pepper. Yatazar?
Pepper, ginger, cloves, nutmeg, and cinnamon were as prized as salt in preserving meat against putrefaction and loss of flavor in winter. Spain's Catholic rulers decided to finance the adventure to get direct access to the sources and to free themselves from the burdensome chain of intermediaries and speculators who monopolized the trade in spices and tropical plants, muslins, and sidearms from the mysterious East. The desire for precious metals, the medium of payment in commercial dealings, also sparked the crossing of the sinister seas. All of Europe needed silver. The seams in Bohemia, Saxony, and the Tyrol were almost exhausted. For Spain, it was an era of reconquest. 1492 was not only the year of the discovery of America, the new world born of that era, which had such momentous consequences, but also of the recovery of Granada. Early that year.
Hold up. Who knows what Granada was? Granada was the last military redoubt that our people, the Israelites, the Moors, those were black people that were Muslim converts. They were the descendants of the Israelites conquered and brought into Islam in Africa. And so,
can you repeat that out?
Granada. Granada was the last military stronghold of the Moors within the Kingdom of Spain. So he's letting you know, before Christopher Columbus would stumble across the Americas, Spain was in the process of reconquering their territory, and the final one was Granada. And they defeated the final stronghold of the Moors in that region of Europe. In Spain, you still had redoubts that had to be conquered in France, in Italy, places like Livorno, places up in Holland. Okay, go ahead, Amayataza. Early
that year, Ferdinand of Aragon and Isabella of Castile, whose marriage had linked their dominions, stormed the last Arab redoubt on Spanish soil. It had taken nearly 8 centuries to win back what was lost in 7 years, and the war of reconquest had drained the royal treasury. But this was a holy war, a Christian war against Islam, and it was no accident that in the same year of 1492, 150,000 Jews were expelled from the country.
Now stop right there. Those 150,000 Jews being expelled from Spain were those what they call Sephardics, and the Sephardics were the demographic of the Khazars that had made their way to Spain. These were not Israelites, just so that you know, all right? Go ahead. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Spain achieved unity and reality as a nation, wielding swords with the sign of the cross on her hilts. Queen Isabella became the patroness of the Holy Inquisition. The feat of discovering America can only be understood in the context of the tradition of crusading wars that prevailed in medieval Castile. The church needed no prompting to provide a halo for the conquest of unknown lands across the ocean. Pope Alexander VI.
So that they understand, the church needed no prompting to provide a halo. You guys know what a halo is. A halo is the little thing, the little circle around the images of holy figures in paintings, right? You guys see, they'll have Jesus with the little, light bulb around his head and all the same. So it's saying that Spain was in such a desperate state after having waged war for 800 years trying to get their land back, that all of their gold and all of their precious metals were depleted, and so they didn't need no extra encouraging to have to provide a quote religious or a sacred reason for them to go and conquer unknown lands. In other words, it was saying the condition that they found themselves in made it easy to make this a quote holy war, to go and conquer other lands. Go ahead.
Pope Alexander VI, who was Spanish, ordained Queen Isabella as proprietor and master of the New World. The expansion of the Kingdom of Castile extended God's reign over the earth.
3 years after the discovery of Columbus, personally directed the military campaign against the natives of Haiti, which he called Española. A handful of cavalry, 200 foot soldiers, and a few specially trained dogs decimated the Indians.
And when it says a handful of cavalry, we're talking about no more than a dozen men on horseback, 200 foot. Because when you realize and remember, they didn't come over with massive fleets. You understand? They didn't come over. They really did have the Nina, the Pinta, and La Santa Maria, the 3 ships that they came over. And those were small Portuguese made. I forgot what the name of those ships were, but the ones that were used in exploring and getting across the world, for the most part, in the beginning, the Portuguese held the market on that. They were the ones who was held down the navigating industry through building those types of ships. So 200 foot soldiers and a few specially trained dogs decimated. Shows you, and the Most High tell you that. Go ahead.
More than 500 shipped to Spain were sold as slaves in Seville and died miserably.
Talking about natives of that land. In other words, what? Going to Egypt in ships before Judah was even thought of. Think about that, y'all. Now, don't get me wrong. At this year, 1492, back in 1450, between 1440 and 1450, the Portuguese were already bringing people from from Angola and other regions of what we could call southwest or south central west Africa to Portugal. This is what was taking place. But as far as bringing so-called Africans, as they call them, brothers, to the Americas, natives were being shipped to Europe way before. 100 years almost before. Go ahead, brother. I'm sorry, more than 500 years from that person again.
Some theologians protested, and the enslavement of Indians was formally banned at the beginning of the 16th century. Actually, it was not banned, but blessed. Before each military action, the captains of the Conquest were required to read to the Indians without an interpreter, but before a notary public, a long and rhetorical requerimiento exhorting them to adopt.
Which means a requirement, you guys. Requerimiento, which means a requirement.
Exhorting them to adopt the Holy Catholic faith.
So in other words, they're getting ready to get decimated, right? They had a policy. In other words, the religious demographic of Spain said, "Hey, we can't be enslaving Indians no more. What we're going to do is we're going to create a dynamic that will justify them being decimated and enslaved after." So the requerimiento was a thing. We're getting ready to read it. What each of the commanders had to read before a Spanish notary public in a language that the Indians did not understand, telling them to give up or be enslaved. So this is what they would read to. Go ahead.
If you do not, or if you maliciously delay in doing so, I certify that with God's help, I will advance powerfully against you and make war on you wherever and however I am able. And I will subject you to the yoke and obedience of the church and of their majesties, and take your women and children to be slaves. And as such I will sell and dispose of them as their majesties may order. And I will take your possessions and do you all the harm and damage that I can.
Now imagine somebody beating that to you right now in English and Spanish. So the Indians they didn't know what the hell was happening, but the fact that they didn't comply, not understanding, was of course taken as what? As them maliciously delaying in doing so.
Salaki, I have a quick question.
Yes.
So was this done to ease the conscience of the Spaniards as if to have given them warning beforehand?
The conscience of the religious demographic. Like there's a guy down here, they recently made a saint. His name was Hermano Pedro, Brother Peter, and he was an advocate. Well, I don't know, I can't remember, but this will probably mention it later on. He was an advocate on behalf of the Indians, because brother, they was getting treated horribly. And so it was a lot of the frailes, they called them, that could not stomach the type of brutality that the soldiers and then the people all in charge. When we say in charge, meaning it was an all military demographic. This is before they started bringing over upper class, what do they call them? Aristocratic bloods to the Americans. So it was really done to ease the conscience of the religious demographic, and then some went as far, like this guy, Hermano Pedro, Brother Peter, who suggested, and this is how they started bringing the brothers from judo.
So you're saying this was done? It's saying this was done to pacify the theologists or theologians.
Yeah, it was done to pass. Not all of them. I mentioned one because this was one of them. There was another cat by the name of Junipero Serra. Like he would say, Junipero Serra. Right? They got Catholic schools named after him all over the place. Point is, among the religious officials who were assigned to do what they called turn them into Catholics. Not all of them, I should say among them, there were those that were prominent though, that was like protesting the brutality with which the conversion process was executed. Not just the conquest, but for instance, killing anybody that spoke the language, but they don't speak Spanish yet. You know what I mean? So you had a cat in Guatemala named Junipero Serra, and other areas he had other priests that really protested that. So this was done to appease them or that demographic of the Spanish clergy. And this guy that I keep mentioning, Hermano Pedro de Betancourt, right? He was the cat that made the suggestion that the Spanish start importing Africans. And that's when they started doing, you'll find out, it was like in 1518 when they got their first license. Then he saw the treatment of them and said, damn, what have I done? He didn't know real cruelty until they started importing Judah over. They treated Judah horribly worse than the natives. And the reason they did so is because Judah lasted a little longer and just took more because he was able to live a few more years longer under that type of brutality. So this is what that's talking about. I think sister, that's what that was about. But it was a very small, you'll see, it was a very small demographic of priests that had those reservations because they was really into, quote, the so-called Catholic faith, and the converting of the Indians as opposed to the brutality. Continue, Amayakia.
America.
Or is that the end of that paragraph for me?
Khan, it's Yawab's turn.
America was the vast kingdom of the devil, its redemption impossible or doubtful. But the financial mission against the natives...
the fanatical.
I'm sorry? Oh, fanatical, Salaki. The fanatical mission against the natives' heresy was mixed with the fever that new world treasures stirred in conquering hosts. Bernal Diaz del Castillo, faithful comrade of Hernan Cortez in the conquest of Mexico, wrote that they had arrived in America to serve God and His Majesty, and had also to get riches. At his first landing on San Salvador Atoll, Columbus was dazzled by the transparent hues of the Caribbean.
Hold on. You guys understand the hues, right? The hues is talking about the different colors of the waters of the Caribbean. Go ahead.
The green landscape, the soft, clean air, the magnificent birds, and the youth, with size and with good faces and well made, who lived there. He gave the natives some red caps and some strings of beads, and many other, what is that, trifles? Trifles of small value, which gave them great pleasure, wherewith they were much delighted, and this made them so much our friends that it was so much our friends that it was a marvel to see. They knew nothing of swords, and when these were shown to them, they grasped the sharp edges and cut themselves. Meanwhile, as the admiral relates in his logbook, I was very attentive to them, and strove to learn if they had any gold, seeing some of them with little bits of metal hanging at their noses. I gathered from them by signs that that by going southward or steering round the island in that direction, there would be found a king who possessed great cups full of gold, and in large quantities. For of gold is treasure made, and with it he who has it does as he wills in the world, and it even sends souls to paradise.
All right.
On his third voyage, Columbus still believed he was in the China Sea. When he was off the coast of Venezuela, this did not prevent him from reporting that an endless land, which was earthly paradise, extended from there. Later, Amerigo Vespucci, America Vespucci, an early 16th century explorer of the Brazilian coast, reported to Lorenzo de Mercedes, the trees are of such beauty and sweetness that we felt we were in earthly paradise. In 1503, Columbus wrote to his monarchs from Jamaica, when I discovered the Indies, I said they were the greatest rich domain in the world. I spoke of the gold, pearls, precious stones, spices. I believe that's 2 paragraphs.
Say that again.
Salaki, I believe that's 2 paragraphs. Doesn't apply, right?
Listen, I'm trying to follow. Is this page? You started on the third part, huh?
Page 14 now, in the Middle Ages.
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that my line was off. Okay.
Next reader.
I got it. Next reader. This is Tasapah, I mean.
In the Middle Ages, a small bag of pepper was worth more than a man's life. But gold and silver were the keys used by the Renaissance to open the doors of paradise in heaven and of capitalist mercantilism on earth. The epic.
Read it a little louder, okay?
The epic of the Spaniards and Portuguese in America combined propagation of the Christian faith with usurpation.
With usurpation.
Usurpation and plunder of native wealth. European power stretches.
Hold on, let's stop that right there. So it's telling you, even back then, the tool with which the Spaniards and the Portuguese used To usurp, which means to take control of, and plunder, which means to steal the native wealth, was what? Was the propagation of the Christian faith. Even in their nativity, they've been using wine to transgress. You understand? Their doctrine, so to speak. Continue, brother.
European power stretched out to embrace the world. The virgin lands bristling with jugs and daggers, feigned the flame.
Jungles and dangers.
Jungles and dangers, feigned the flames of avarice among the captains.
You guys know what avarice is. Avarice is greed. Go ahead, the Hidalgos.
The Hidalgos of horseback and the rag soldiers who went out after the spectacular booty of war, they believed in glory, in the Son of the dead, and in the key to achieve it, which Cortez defines thus: fortune favors the daring. Cortez himself had mortgaged everything he owed to equip his Mexican expedition, which a few exceptions, Columbus, Pedrarias de Villa, Magellan, the expeditions of conquest were not financed by the state, but by conquistadors themselves, or by businessmen who put up money for their ventures.
So listen, what he's showing you is that out of all of the admirals that would participate in the conquest, only Columbus, only Davila, and Magellan were the ones who were financed by their respective states. Everybody else had to mortgage or finance and put in hot all of their things that they owned. They either did it through banking houses of Europe at the time, or they did it through other businessmen who would actually put up and finance them. You have another one, or is that me now?
What we doing? Two
paragraphs.
What do you mean by states? Like territories?
When you say financed by the states, you mean?
The specific states, you mean that they're territories?
Yes, it's talking about the country. Like, for instance, Columbus was financed by the state, meaning the country, the head of state of the country, which was Ferdinand of Aragon, the king of Spain, that came from the house of Aragon, and Isabella, the queen of Spain, that came from the house of Castile. That's the state. The state was the country, but the country being ruled by the monarch of the day. So let's say if someone was to go out and conquer another land, President Trump would finance it using the U.S. Treasury. You understand? That's what, in other words, the state just represents the country, the respective country. Like Magellan was they call him Magellan, but his name was Magallanes. And he was the Portuguese one that the Portuguese sent out. Pedrarias and Davila, or Columbus and Davila well, Columbus actually was an Italian financed by Spain. And Davila, I believe, was a Spanish financed by Spain. Is it still on you, Tazapon? Or was that the second paragraph?
I believe I'm going into the second paragraph.
That was the second one?
No, I'm going into it now.
Okay, cool.
The myth of El Dorado, the Golden King, was born. Golden were the streets and houses of his kingdom cities. In search of El Dorado, a century after Columbus, Sir Walter Raleigh sailed up the Orinoco and was defeated by its cataracts. The whilps of the mountains that gush silver became a reality in 1545 with the discovery of Potosi. But before this, many adventurers who sailed up the Rio Parana in a vain search for the silver spring had died of hunger or disease or pierced by native arrows.
In other words, now what this paragraph is telling us that during the time between Christopher Columbus 1495, now I say 1495 because it tells you, remember it says 3 years after Christopher Columbus' first voyage, he sailed with a handful of cavalry, 200 soldiers, and a couple of dogs, trained dogs. That's talking about in 1495. So between 1495 and 1545, the myth of a golden city. They can make cartoons about it for kids now, El Dorado, the golden city. But they said it finally came true when they got to Potosi. Now Potosi is a mountain that's found in a region today of Bolivia. But it says before 1445, many people that sailed up this river Paraná. The Rio Paraná is a river that's kind of close to, Paraná is like a region in Brazil. So there's rivers that they were taking that would, how can we put it? That released into the Atlantic, but they would enter in from the Atlantic into those rivers looking for this famed place called El Dorado. And so up until 1445, everybody that searched for it was dying of hunger or disease or by the native arrows, meaning the Indians was killing their ass. I guess it's me now, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Someone have a question?
Yeah, my bad. I got another question.
No, go ahead.
So where did they get this idea that El Dorado existed in the first place?
Well, that's the point. Remember, it's 15. Let's do this. 1545. What had happened between 1492 and 1545? In other words, 1492, Christopher Columbus gets there. 1495, Christopher Columbus begins to sack Hispaniola, which would later on become Haiti and the Dominican Republic, for all the gold that it had to offer, while at the same time planting the first sugarcane plantations to be planted in the Americas, getting mad rich. Now, the 1530, what is it? I got 1521. I'm trying to remember that the specific dates of the conquest of Tenochtitlan, which would become Mexico City. So,
say that again. Conquest of what?
The conquest of Mexico City, the conquest of the Aztec Empire. The capital city was called Tenochtitlan. Tenochtitlan. Atlatlan, all these different lines, right? And so they got mad gold in Mexico from Tenochtitlan. They got mad gold in Mexico from Zacatecas. All of this has been happening before 1545. So as the smaller, I shouldn't say smaller, as the initial conquests were taking place and massive amounts of gold and silver are being shipped back, gold particularly, are being shipped back to Spain, the magnitude of the gold that was being received in Spain was giving way to greater myths of more gold in other places unexplored at that point. You understand?
Okay, yeah.
So that's how, so by the time 1545 come, now everybody's looking for, and remember El Dorado is Spanish, it just means golden. So they're talking about really La Ciudad Dorada, the golden city. El Dorado would be El Reino, the king, the golden kingdom. And guess what? They found it. They didn't realize it, but what happened was, what we're reading about, you're going to see as more gold was found, the greed would intensify, and therefore the expectation would intensify and augment. All right? So it's on me. I'm starting it again. It says, there was indeed gold and silver in large quantities, accumulated in the Mexican plateau and the Andean altiplano. The altiplano is like the highlands. In 1519, there it is, Cortés told Spain of the fabulous magnitude of Montezuma's Aztec treasure. And 15 years later, there arrived in Seville the gigantic ransom. In other words, he told them about it in 1519. 15 years later, you know, because once they conquered it, they had to melt all the stuff down that they wanted to melt down, and then they shipped it all back to Spain. And many of them ships got shipwrecked out. Anyway, it's going on. And 15 years later, they arrived in Seville, the gigantic ransom. A room full of gold and 2 of silver. Imagine a room full of gold and 2 rooms of silver, which Francisco Pizarro had made the Inca Atahualpa pay for strangling him. Paid before strangling him. In other words, Atahualpa, the king of the Incas, was strangled, but before he was strangled to death, Francisco Pizarro made him pay a whole bunch of money. And so these 2 roomfuls of gold, this 1 roomful of gold and 2 roomfuls of silver was actually from Peru, the Inca Empire. Years earlier, the crown had paid the sailors on Columbus's first voyage with gold carried off from the Antilles. The Antilles is the Caribbean. That would be talking about Haiti and the Dominican Republic, where he was at. The Caribbean island, listen to this. The Caribbean island population, it says island in singular because they were on the island of Hispaniola, which we know today as Haiti and the Dominican Republic, you know, splitting the island. The Caribbean island populations finally stopped paying tribute because they had disappeared. They were totally exterminated in the gold mines. I want to get the people that think that they're Puerto Rican today ain't. They were sent over from Cortés from Mexico. Don't even know it. Anyway, and a lot of them sent down from the Native Americans, the black Native Americans from the United States were being shipped down to the Caribbean. But we'll get to those. Once again, the Caribbean island population finally stopped paying tribute because they had disappeared. They were totally exterminated in the gold mines. In the deadly task of sifting out auriferous sands with their bodies half submerged in water, or in breaking up the ground beyond the point of exhaustion, doubled up over the heavy cultivating tools brought from Spain. Remember, they were worn out to death. Many natives of Haiti anticipated the fate imposed by their white oppressors. They killed their children and committed mass suicide. Now, that's what we did in Jerusalem also, if you can remember at Masada. Reading on down. The mid-16th century historian Fernandez de Oviedo interpreted the Antillean Holocaust thus. Now listen, this is no words, this was Oviedo, I'm sorry, Fernandez de Oviedo. This was their historian's way of chronicling what they had did to the natives of the Caribbean, of Haiti. It says many of them, by way of diversion, took poison rather than work, and others hanged themselves with their own hands. His interpretation founded a school I am amazed to read in the latest book by the French technician René Dumont, right? 1970. I don't know. In other words, this is his. Well, let me finish reading it because it's in parentheses. This is his own personal side thought of this historian's take on the Holocaust of the Antilles. All right, the first Holocaust. His interpretation founded a school I am amazed to read in the latest book by the French technician René Dumont. Cuba, is it socialist? The Indians were not totally exterminated. Listen to what he's saying. In other words, this is the Spanish historian. The Indians were not totally exterminated. Their genes subsist in Cuban chromosomes. They felt such an aversion for the tension which continuous work demands that some kill themselves rather than accept forced labor. In other words, he's putting an excerpt in from from the French. In other words, how can we put it? Fernandez de Oviedo has one thought, but the French person, whose name is Rene, has another thought. He's saying, no, they have the same spirit that would later the Cubans would have. The Indians were not totally exterminated. Their genes subsist in Cuban chromosomes. In other words, he's saying the people of Haiti and of the original peoples of Haiti and the Dominican Republic that were exterminated, their family members, their chromosomal family members existed in the island of Cuba who weren't completely exterminated. I don't know if you guys understand that's what he's saying. That's why he said the Indians were not totally exterminated. Their genes, not the people, their genes subsist in Cuban chromosomes, the island of Cuba. And I think the term Cuba was a Hebrew word that meant helmet. Anyway, they felt such an aversion for the tension which continuous work demands that some killed themselves rather than accept forced labor. And that's really what happened. A lot of them were committing mass suicide. That was one long paragraph. I'll read one more in the next. It says, the gods returned with secret weapons. This is another section. While passing Tenerife on his first voyage, you there? What's up, Amietas? You want to make an observation or a point?
No, I'm just saying that my book is slightly different.
What does it say?
I know it's just the ending of that previous paragraph. No, it's nothing serious.
Okay. So we're moving on to the the last of this two paragraphs. The gods returned with secret weapons. While passing Tenerife on his first voyage, Columbus had witnessed a great volcanic eruption. It seemed an omen of all that would come later on in the immense new lands which surprisingly stood athwart.
Actually, let me read this because this is slightly different to yours.
Okay, go ahead and read it.
So this is from that last chapter.
Where are you going to pick it up at?
The middle of it. It says, because it doesn't even mention Cuba. Actually, let me just read the whole paragraph.
Well, see, that's the whole point. You see, it's in parentheses, right? And so the English version was done with another person's foreword. And so the foreword is going to be accompanied by updated thoughts and pieces of information that will be in parentheses. That's what this is about.
Oh, okay. Cool. Let's just continue then.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
You read it because you still want to get that person's take on it.
No, do you know what? I think, because I popped to the bathroom, I didn't see that part. But yeah, carry on. We're good.
Do you see it? Do you see that part in your book?
Yeah, the purpose is at the bottom. Yeah, we're good.
Okay, cool. All right. One. The gods returned with secret weapons. While passing Tenerife on his first voyage, Columbus had witnessed a great volcanic eruption. It seemed an omen of all that would come later in the immense new lands which, surprisingly, stood athwart the western route to Asia. That's just saying that they was on their way to Asia, and then America got in the way. That's what makes me just a thought. Okay? Like they didn't expect for it to be there. Let me finish. Let me see. Stood athwart the western route to Asia. America was there. At first, the subject of conjecture from its endless coasts, then conquered in successive waves, like a furious tide beating in. Talking about the first America, the so-called discovering of America was just, when it says conjecture from its endless coast, in other words, it was the subject of conversation on how vast it was. Endless coast is talking about from way up beyond north of Canada all the way down to South America. Those are the endless coasts being referred to. Then afterward, once it was accepted that you could get there and it was known, it says, then conquered in successive waves like a furious tide beating it. That means the Spanish came in, along with the Europeans began to come in tides like a wave. First the Spanish, then the Portuguese, then the Dutch, then the French, then the English. That's what it's referring to. Admirals gave place to governorships, to governors. Admirals gave place to governors. Ships' crews were converted into invading hosts. What does that mean? That, like Christopher Columbus was an admiral. He was in charge. He was the top official in charge of a fleet of ships for a specific country. So once he found a certain place, so to speak, he was converted from admiral into governor. The ship's crews that accompanied him went from being crew members to invading hosts, meaning from being crew members to what? To military. Papal papal bulls are documents and edicts, decisions extended by the sitting popes of the time. That's what a papal bull is. Papal bulls had apostolically granted Africa, listen to this, to the Portuguese crown. Now, why does it say that? Because I've just got to tell you, in between 1440 and 1450s, the Portuguese were actually the first of the Europeans to go and start colonizing the continent, areas of the continent of Africa. That's why you have Cabo Verde, the islands off the, or Cape Verde, they said in English, off the west coast. You have Angola, which is southwest/central. Then you have Mozambique, which is southeast. All of these were the pockets that the Most High had sent the Portuguese to start bringing the kingdom of Judah out of Africa into Portugal first. So because of them beginning to do that first, excuse me, the papal bulls, the Pope of the day, granted the entire continent to the Portuguese. That's why it says papal bulls had apostolically, meaning religiously, right, granted Africa to the Portuguese crown. And the lands unknown, like those already discovered by your envoys, and those to be discovered. In other words, he was saying everything that you discovered, that you have discovered, and all those that you will continue to discover, I, the Pope, grant this land to you. All right? Who's after me? Is this Amayantis again? Oh, it's Amayantis. Go ahead.
Okay.
What you got?
Discover your and those to be discovered.
There's
more.
Did I get cut off? Okay.
There's more.
For me, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay, let me find it because
I can read it.
No, I got it. What happens is my page just keeps skipping. So you can go ahead, just for the sake of flow, go ahead and start reading.
Okay. America had been given to Queen Isabella. In 1508, another bull granted the Spanish crown in perpetuity. All tribes collected in the...
Hold on. There's got to be a little bit something else. Okay, I can see that. Well, this is the problem with my version. It's not my version. It's the computer that I have to make the page big enough so I can see, and then how to change the page, you know?
Yeah, I'm finishing off your section.
Okay, but I'm trying to pick up where it was. Okay, those to be discovered in the Americas, right? Or in the future.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
The coveted patronage of the New World Church included a royal prerogative over all ecclesiastical benefices. The Treaty of Tordesillas, signed in 1494, allowed Portugal to occupy Latin American territories below a dividing line traced by the Pope, and in 1530, Martin Afonso de Souza founded the first Portuguese communities in Brazil, expelling French intruders.
Now hold on, it's showing you. In 1530, Brazil was founded, but French people had already been there. They were, you know, and their territories would span from what would be known as French Guyana. The Dutch, the French, and the Portuguese were always fighting over that region because they started, you remember you had the British Guyana, you have, which is still called Guyana today in Brazil. Then you have the Dutch region of Guyana, which is today is called Suriname. Then you had French Guyana, which the Portuguese kicked out, and all that is included into Brazil, the northern part of Brazil, the northwestern part. Yeah.
My bad. Another question.
Go ahead. No, not too bad. You're good.
In the previous paragraph, when it said the coveted patronage in the New World Church, so when it says they had a prerogative over all ecclesiastical benefices, is that talking? So they're talking about from a law perspective, ecclesiastical meaning law, like law driven. What are they talking?
No. When you say ecclesiastical, it's real
beneficiaries.
Oh no. Go to the Bible real quick and go to the book of Ecclesiastes.
Yeah.
Not the popular one. And then look what it says underneath the book. It should say underneath the writing of Ecclesiastes. It should say something else. What does yours say? And everybody else do the same.
It says Ecclesiastes or the preacher.
Yeah, or the preacher.
Okay, because it means the term ecclesiastic in the Latin gives way to what they call the church, the iglesias. In English, it means the preaching or the calling out. So let me break this last portion down. I got to use the restroom. When it says the coveted patronage of the New World Church included a royal prerogative over all ecclesiastical benefits. That's telling you patronage. The people that conquered, the parties that was making these, quote, discoveries, right, would receive religious patronage from the church. That's why after they conquered, what happened? They would send the priests down. And the priest would convert all the survivors. When it says a royal prerogative, that means that was their right to do so, to exercise that over all ecclesiastical benefices. That means that the church, just like you read how the papal bull, the Pope's document said, okay, Africa, you Portugal, you get Africa. But in turn, what benefit did that church get? The church got to extend its theological or its ideological rule over all of these subjects. And from them, you're going to see as we read on, the church became one of the richest demographics of Europe in the New World. And so, but what benefit did the conquerors get in, let's say, adhering to the papal bulls? They got global, or at least in Europe, recognition of what? To be the owners of that property. This is how much power the Catholic Church had, man. If the Pope said this beyond this parallel and beyond this region, this belongs to Portugal, the other nations didn't deal with it. You understand? That's why it took so long. Remember, the other kingdoms of Europe didn't come in and start doing Africa until the 1850s. That whole thing, it just Portugal couldn't explore and conquer enough of Africa. But they got big portions of it. And so other nations, like France, came in and started whooping up on the north. Italy came and started whooping up on the north, and Britain on the northeast. Germany came and started whooping, and France, or Germany actually came and started whooping up on northern central, like places like Cameroon. So that's what this is talking about when it says ecclesiastical benefits. Listen, look up the term benefice, so you can understand that.
And the black laws, just no.
Look it up. Let's go to the dictionary. Let's not guess. I want to help you guys get to the portion where you ask the question and we answer, but then let's look it up so everybody else can see it.
A permanent church appointment.
There you go. So people like the person that I mentioned, like Hermano Pedro, he had a permanent appointment that he died holding in Guatemala. Then you had another cat born in Spain but came over like at 4 or 5 years old named Diego Dorado, the one that wrote the book History of the Aztecs and described and recognized them as being Israelites. So that's what it was telling me. The patronage, the church patronized the conquest, but received received foothold, received strongholds in these new lands that were just as powerful as the people who conquered the lands, because all those people who conquered the lands were damn Catholic and answered to the church.
Wrote the rest of the definition.
Go, you got it? Yeah, go ahead.
A permanent church appointment, typically that of a rector or vicar, for which property and income are provided in respect of pastoral duties.
And that's what I'm trying to explain to you. And so the church, the Catholic Church, would end up becoming one of the greatest Look up the Catholic Church right now and find out who they're among, if not the greatest landowner on the planet as an institution. Meanwhile, I'm gonna use the restroom. Be right back. So look that up on Getzai and read what you get, okay? Look up Catholic Church property holdings, global property holdings. Something to that effect. Let's go to the points. And then you can scroll.
Nice one, Nagaha.
that last one said it's impossible to calculate it.
Say that again?
I'll talk to the brother.
What did you get? Oh, that's probably got that for me. I can't handle it, man. What did y'all come up with that look for the, and that search for the Catholic properties worldwide?
Yes, it's very interesting. In a article from 2013 titled "How the Vatican Built a Secret Property Empire Using Mussolini's Millions." Exactly, that's where it came from.
Listen, that's talking about from that one. The church had millions. Mussolini, you're talking about World War II. We're reading about 400 years before that. Go ahead.
So it says, Papacy used offshore tax havens to create £500 million international portfolio featuring real estate in UK, France, and Switzerland.
You're talking Europe. We're talking the New World, huh? Well,
yeah.
Do they have anything? Well, listen, we
well,
want.
Nagahar dropped something in the chat where it says the Roman Catholic Church is almost certainly the wealthiest organization in the world. In the United States alone, it is estimated that the Catholic Church has an operating budget, an operating budget of $170 billion. By comparison, in fiscal year 2012, Apple and General Motors each had about 150 billion in revenue worldwide.
And the Catholic Church, 170 billion or whatever it was, is just the United States alone.
And that's the operating budget.
Yeah.
That's not that's not like from wherever they get money from, like revenue and stuff like that. That's the money they're spending just to keep going. Whereas the operating budget, if the global revenue of Apple and General Motors is 150 billion, their operating budget might be, I don't know, like say like 1 billion, or it's gonna be a fraction of that, because that's like your living expenses,
right.
You know.
So in the United States, the Catholic Church, and that means, what does it cost? It's like the school has an operating budget. And what is you guys' school operating budget? I'm going to tell you what it is. It consists of the rent that it costs to be in the school.
Exactly.
Of the utilities to keep the lights on, the internet, the phone, and then the business that's required, the business that you guys have to pay the men. That's operating budget. And that shows you, if that means the operating budget is a fraction of what your holdings are. And so if the Catholic Church operating budget is 170 billion, then that means their true wealth is uncalculable.
I got something on the property.
Say that again. You have speak. Come closer.
I got something on the property. Kawakab, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
I got something on the property.
Oh, go ahead.
With more than 1 billion adherents, the Catholic Church is one of the largest, if not the largest, non-governmental landowners in the world. One estimate puts the church holdings close to 177 million acres, or 277,000 square miles.
Damn.
The church has been acquiring land since its inception in 313 AD. As of 2011, the Pope was one of the world's top 3 largest landowners, behind King Abdullah of Saudi Arabia and Queen Elizabeth II.
Now, all of that began in this side of the world with these papal bulls, and beginning like in the 1500s. So y'all see that, right? That's what that's talking about. So Amayatazar, you can read again from the top of that paragraph, your first paragraph, the Treaty of Tordesillas.
The Treaty of Tordesillas, signed in 1494, allowed Portugal to occupy Latin American territories below a dividing line traced by the Pope, and in 1530, Martin Afonso de Souza founded the first Portuguese communities in Brazil, expelling French intruders. By then, the Spaniards, crossing an infinity of hellish jungles and hostile deserts, had advanced far in the process of exploration and conquest.
Stop right there. So, when it says the hellish jungles, because they came in from the Atlantic Ocean, they had to cross all, and you have no idea the immense size and density of the rainforests of not of Brazil, but of South America that shares a border with about 9 countries. Then you get to places like Bolivia, where it's one of the hottest places on earth, from the desert. People know that you got hot-ass deserts in South America. You know what? They made a movie with the James Bond movie over the issues of water in Bolivia, the deserts of Bolivia, with that guy, with the new James Bond, whose name is Daniel Craig. I forgot the name of it's called. It's the last one I saw. But you go and they actually give they actually have true footage of the deserts in South America, brother. And like it said, infernal or hellish. So
Quantum of Solace.
Say that again.
The movie was called Quantum of Solace.
That was it, Quantum of Solace, and it was about water in the damn in the middle of that is Bolivia, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
It did Panama City, Haiti, and Bolivia.
Yeah, there you go. Okay. Continue on Yataza. It says in 1513.
In 1513, the South Pacific glittered before the eyes of Vasco Nunez de Balboa.
Hold on. Now, let me say this. Do you guys realize? First, let's read this paragraph, and I'm gonna explain it to you in retrospect. The verse, what was taking place. But listen to, take note of all of these places. In 1513, the South Pacific glittered before the eyes of Vasco Nunez de Balboa. Go ahead.
In the fall of 1522, the 18 survivors of Ferdinand Magellan's expedition returned to Spain.
Now hold on. These were the cats that went and got their asses whooped. Magellan died in the Philippines, and another guy, Del Cano was the guy, or Del Cao, they call you said in Portuguese, Ducao, and returned to Spain. So Magellan, that's why I said 18 survivors of Ferdinand Magellan's expedition returned to Spain. Continue.
They had for the first time united both oceans and confirmed that the world was round by circling it.
Now this is for the flat earthers. They just need to read this piece of history and follow the trajectory of when Ferdinand Magellanos is how you say it in Portuguese. He left, and whatever you call the person second in charge, they left and they took off toward crossing the Atlantic toward the west, and they would go. And they would the Panama Canal was not built there, so they had to go south of the most dangerous waters of South America. Then they traversed the South Pacific. They got a stronghold, got their ass whooped. They ended up getting it in the Philippines. Then they came on back around and went south of Africa and made it on back to Portugal. So you guys have to look up the Ferdinand Magellan and Del Cano is how they'll say it in English, their voyage, and you'll see they circled the globe. Go ahead.
3 years earlier, Hernan Cortez' 10 ships had sailed from Cuba toward Mexico, and in 1523, Pedro de Alvarado launched the conquest of Central America. Francisco Pizarro, an illiterate pig breeder, triumphantly entered Cusco in 1533 and seized the heart.
Cusco was in Peru. Go ahead.
And seized the heart of the Inca Empire. In 1514, Pedro de Valdivia crossed the Atacama Desert and founded Santiago de Chile. The conquistadors penetrated the Chaco and laid bare the New World from Peru to the mouth of the mightiest river on our planet.
Talking about the Amazon. Now let me say this. All of those places, look at the extreme. South Pacific, Central America, Mexico. All of, when it says Cusco, you're talking about, people don't know how big the Inca Empire was. Now, you have to find the scripture where the Most High, and I believe it's in it. Who knows the vision or the prophecy that the Most High gave? Word is in Ezekiel, where the Most High had Ezekiel cut off part of his beard. He had to take some of it and chop it up. He had to take another of it and burn it. He had to take another of it and blow it into the wind. Who knows where that's at? Because that's what this is talking about. The Most High said, those that are burned, I'm going to kill them in the siege. Those that I had to chop up signify those that will die by the sword. And those that I blow upon, I will scatter to the wind and send the sword after them. And so what happens is, this is what that was being done. So what is it about this dynamic where all of Latin America, not all of what would become Latin America, was being conquered, and then an isolated area in the South Pacific called the Philippines was conquered by the Spanish and the Portuguese, because the Most High was specifically sending a sword out after Israel. That's what people don't get. And that's why I said you got to find that chapter. The Most High.
It's Ezekiel 5.
Chapter 5.
Let's read that. Ezekiel 5 and 1 to let me get there. Excuse me, y'all. Man, that one just flew out. It's called hunger. You got that, Nagaha? I want you to read that. All right.
And thou, son of man, take thee a sharp knife, take thee a barber's razor, and cause it to pass upon thine head and upon thy beard. Then take thee balances to weigh and divide the hair.
He said, I want you to take some scales. This goes to show you Ezekiel had one hair. Edomite hair ain't got no weight to it. Go ahead.
Verse 2. Thou shalt burn with fire a third part in the midst of the city, when the days of the siege are fulfilled. And thou shalt take a third part, and smite about it with a knife. And a third part thou shalt scatter in the wind, and I will draw out a sword after them.
That's cold. Go ahead.
Verse 3. Thou shalt also take thereof a few in number, and bind them in thy skirts. Then take of them again, and cast them into the midst of the fire, and burn them in the fire, for thereof shall the fire come forth into all the house of Israel.
Now, listen. Hello? Is somebody saying something?
That was Nagaha. It's okay.
Oh, it's okay. It's feedback. So listen, this is what was taking place. The Most High was fulfilling this. See, this ain't even. This is not Deuteronomy. This, when I say not Deuteronomy, meaning this is not the book of Deuteronomy, but the dynamic that the Most High gives great detail in Deuteronomy is also mentioned here. And that's what happened. The Most High was sending a sword after us. So you had some that died in Israel. You had some that was burnt up in the siege. And then you had some that the Most High scattered across the world and then sent a sword after them. And this is the dynamic that we read. People be talking about, and then later on, the other countries would come and occupy and destroy Hawaii. You gotta see what the Hawaiians look like. Shit, they were dark as hell. Looked like the last king of Hawaii. I'm trying to think of the guy's name. It might not even be the last king. or it was Tonga. Looked like a damn actor named John or Joe Seneca. He's the guy that played Willie Brown and Robert Johnson in that movie, The Crossroads, the old blues singer that made the deal with the devil. They look like that. All the old pictures, brother, they are cool. I wish I could. I don't know how to do that. Well, you can't put that in the thing now. I have pictures of the people of South Pacific, and they look like a bunch of Judites in grass skirts sitting on a damn fire, grinding pepper, grinding some little spice. I was like, damn. But you can clearly see it's not nowhere in America. It's in the South Pacific. And so and here you go. We just reading in 1513, the South Pacific, meaning the Portuguese navigator Vasco. No, that's Spanish. The Portuguese Vasco da Gama, Vasco de Balboa. Da Gama is Florida. And Fernand Magallanes, or Fernand Magellan. I mean, you see it in English and speaking it in Portuguese. These are the cats that went and initiated. When I say initiated, they started off the conquest that would take place in the South Pacific. The Most High was doing what we're reading here, or what we read in Ezekiel 5, and finding all the pockets where Israel was sent. It was our judgment had come. Go ahead, Yaktazah. You got a paragraph. There was what's said again?
It's the last sentence of that paragraph right at the end.
Go ahead.
2 lines before the end. The conquistadors penetrated the Chacal and laid bare the New World from Peru to the mouth of the mightiest river on our planet. There was something of everything among the natives of Latin America. Astronomers and cannibals, engineers and Stone Age savages. But none of the native cultures knew iron or the plow or grass or gunpowder or used glass or gunpowder or used the wheel except on their votive carts. The civilization from across the ocean that descended upon these lands were undergoing the creative explosion of the Renaissance. Latin America seemed like another invention to be incorporated, along with gunpowder, printing, paper, and the compass, in the bubbling birth of the modern age. The unequal development of the two worlds explains the relative ease with which native civilization succumbed. Cortez landed at Veracruz with no more than 100 sailors and 508 soldiers. He had 16 horses, 32 crossbows, 10 bronze cannon, and a few harquebuses, muskets, and pistols. Pizarro entered Cajamarca with 180 soldiers and 37 horses. That was enough. Yet the Aztec capital, Tenochtitlan, was then 5 times larger than Madrid and had double the population of Seville, Spain's largest city. And in Peru, Pizarro met an army of 100,000 Indians.
So it's showing you. Remember what the Most High told us, that we would meet these armies and we would be scattered 7 ways before them. These cats came with nobody. This is what is Veracruz, the place where Hernan Cortez landed in Mexico. 100 sailors, 508 soldiers, meaning the sailors were all dedicated to making sure they got there by ship. The 508 soldiers were dedicated to the military campaign that would ensue once they got there. 16 horses, 32 crossbows, 10 bronze cannons, and a few arquebuses. Arquebuses, you gotta look that up. That's the precursor to the rifle that Leonardo da Vinci invented. People don't know that. But Most High blessed Esau with the weapon, with the gun, with the sword. So look up the image, every one of arquebuses on your own, and you'll see what it is, right? It's the precursor to the rifle. Muskets and pistols, right? These several, I'm just reading you over into Cajamarca. Listen to this, 180 soldiers, right? And 37 horses. He said that was enough. And they asked him, but he said at the same time, while Hernan only had 508 soldiers and 100 sailors, the population, the population of the capital alone was 5 times larger than Madrid and had double the population of Seville, which was at the time Spain's largest city. So how did Israel fall? It was the Most High. It's the Most High. How the hell do you listen? And in Peru, Pizarro led an army of 100,000 Indians. How do you lose to one? How do 100,000 Indians lose to no more than 500, 600 soldiers, if not the Most High? Huh? Continue on Yatazam. Is there more? Is that the next paragraph?
That's the end.
Okay. Who's next?
I'm next. The Indians were also defeated by terror.
Stop right there. Read that again.
The Indians were also defeated by terror.
Now, what does Deuteronomy tell us the Most High would do? He said he there would give us a trembling heart. So we were afraid as hell at the things that we saw, the devices that they came with, that they rode upon, that they had in their hand, this thing that seemed to shoot out fire. Go ahead, brother.
And the sound of it too.
Say that again.
The sound of the guns.
Exactly. It's going to tell you that. But they thought it was thunder. It's true. Go ahead.
The Emperor Montezuma received the first news in his palace. A large hill was moving over the sea.
Listen to this. A large hill. That means that's them describing the ship coming. A large hill. Go ahead. Un gran cerro. Go ahead.
More messengers arrived. He was very alarmed by the report of how the cannon exploded, how its thunder reverberated, and how it filled one with awe and stunned one's ears. And when it went off, a sort of stone ball came from its entrails, and it rained fire.
Yeah, no, a stone. This is them describing the cannon. And then when the thing sounded off, sort of a stone hail came from its entrails, meaning from inside of this thing, and it rained fire. Boom, that's the cannon thing landed. Go ahead.
The strangers sat on deer as high as rooftops.
Talking about them tall-ass military horses, brother. They call them deer. The rooftops. Go ahead.
Their bodies were completely covered. Only their faces can be seen. They are white as if made of lime. They have yellow hair, although some have black.
Stop right there. This is written in the Indians' account. It shows you people when they watch. Anybody ever watch the? There's one of the. I'm trying to think of the movie. What's the dude? The fatty pirate. The Pirates of the Caribbean. And there's one. Because they got like 5 or 6 of them, right? One of them is they looking for the Fountain of Youth. And it turns out that the captain, the one that Johnny Depp plays, another captain whose name was Robert or somebody teach. That dude was a real pirate. Trying to think of what his name was. He was known as Blackbeard, but his name was Robert or Richard or somebody teach. And he was the most brutal pirate, the brutalest pirate in the history of pirates. He was in search in real life with Fountain of Youth. And they show the Spanish. They all come to a certain place where they actually find it. You have to have a mermaid's tear, all these different things, right? But the point I'm making is how they always show in the movies the Spanish as these dark-colored cats. These cats was, they look like, think about it, they look no different than Robert Redford. And that's why they're discreet, and they're white as if they were made of lime. They have yellow hair, although some have black. You're talking about the most leprous forms of Esau came down here, but somehow they got this image of being swarthy. That's what they call them, swarthy and dark. Because you know what they're doing when they do Hollywood? They're taking the ones that were the descendants of Moors that raped white women and had those mixed-looking babies. But the Spanish, the originals, the true Spanish, they don't have that color like they try to make them look in the movie. Then this is the description that the Indians are given. They are white as if made of lime. They have yellow hair, although some have black. Continue on, Yatazar.
long are their beards. Montezuma thought it was a god of Quetzalcoatl returning. There had been 8 prophecies of this not long before. Hunters had brought him a bird with a round mirror-like crest on its head in which the sunset was reflected. In this mirror, Montezuma saw squadrons of warriors marching on Mexico.
In other words, what is he talking about when he said he's talking about the a looking glass where he could see from his palace down to where he says on Mexico, down to where the stones was coming, and he could see them getting off them ships and coming toward his land. Go ahead.
Quetzalcoatl had come from the east and gone to the east. He was white and bearded. Also white and bearded was Viracocha, the bisexual god of the Incas.
Check this out. These were all these omens that are people in their idolatry had, where the Most High was foretelling of their conquest, but in twisted ways to them because of what they were practicing. So Viracocha, bisexual god of the Incas, that's almost today like, what do you call that?
Baphomet?
That the people that with the goat head.
Baphomet.
Said Baphomet. Thank you. Go ahead.
And the east was the cradle of the Maya's hero ancestors.
No, it's saying that the east, it was known to be that the east was known to be the provenance of strange and many prophecies to be fulfilled, and that the Mayas had, and we got that book here. It's called Señores de Totonicapán. In other words, the Mayans tell everybody they came from the east, and they give the history not just of their 3 main nations from which they all come, but all the other tribes that came with them that collectively were called a different name. I had it a couple of weeks ago. I mentioned, I can't think of the term, but they knew that they came from the east. Then listen to what. Go ahead, Amiyata. Read what's in parentheses. I'm sorry, Amiyata.
The avenging gods were now returning to settle accounts with their peoples, had armor and coats of mail, lustrous caparisons that deflected arrows and stones. Their weapons emitted deadly rays and darkened the air with suffocating smoke.
So the weapons that emitted deadly rays is talking about those arquebuses. Go ahead, and the muskets. Continue.
The conquistadors also practiced the arts of treachery and intrigue with refined expertise. They sagely allied themselves with the, how do you say that?
Tlaxcalans. Tlaxcaltecos is what they say in Spanish. Tlaxcalans. That was one of the smaller groups. I shouldn't say smaller. That was one of the groups that the black Aztecs dominated the Tlaxcaltecos. They dominated the Olmecas. All the different families of Israelites, the Aztecs had grown to dominate. You're talking about different families of the Israelites that just grew into these clans. And so the Tlaxcaltecans, they joined themselves with the Spanish. Go ahead.
Tlaxcalans against Montezuma and effectively exploited the split in the Inca Empire between the brothers Huascar and Atapualpa.
Right, those were 2 brothers, and Atahualpa was the king, and Huascar was his younger brother that was jealous and was ready to do what it took to get the throne. So it's telling you the Spanish exploited that enmity between those 2 brothers over the Incans, while they also exploited the fact that different demographics of the Aztec Empire were not, wanted to fight to dethrone the Aztecs, and they thought because the Aztecs or because the Spanish that came were so few, they could unite with them because of their advanced weaponry defeat them, and that their numbers would allow them to destroy the Spanish. They didn't know that the Spanish was going to keep on coming in waves and waves and waves, and eventually outnumber their asses because of the sicknesses and diseases that they would bring. And remember, at this point, all of the Europeans was just getting over the Black Plague. Everybody that came from Europe were those who were carriers. They would call them asymptomatic today. In other words, they got the gene in them, or not the gene, the virus in them, but they have an immune to them, but they could pass it on. And that's what happened. Continue.
They knew how to win accomplices for their crimes among the intermediate ruling classes, priests, officials, and defeated soldiers and high Indian chiefs. But they also used other weapons, or if you prefer, other factors operated objectively for the victory of the invaders. Horses and bacteria, for example.
So in other words, they had the advantage of the horses and the bacteria. Go ahead. Is this your second paragraph or your first?
Second.
You just read it, right? That was it?
Con.
Okay, who's next? Is that our yellow eye?
Con.
Horses, like camels, had once been indigenous to Latin America, but had become extinct. In Europe, where they were introduced by Arab horsemen, they had proved to be of enormous military and economic value. When they reappeared in Latin America during the Conquest, they lent magic powers to the invaders in the natives' astonished eyes. Altapula saw the first Spanish soldiers arriving on spirited steeds adorned with plumes or plums? Plumes, okay, Dorado. Plumes and little bells, making thunder and clouds of dust with their swift hooves. Panic-stricken, the Inca fell down on his back. The chief Tecum, leading the descendants of the Mayas.
Hey, let me say this about that. Tecumumang, right? They got this phenomenon down here where they be teasing black people. You be like negro, or they'll say, pitaya. Which pitaya, people don't know it means Indian, it means Caribbean. Yeah, but all you gotta say to these dudes is Tecumumang, and brother, that pulls the spirit out of them. Because you know that how many just are. That's how you say you damn Indian, but they don't know Tecumumang like a great dude. But they've been trained to hate themselves so much that if you say, oh man, you look just like Tecumumang, brother, it pulls the air out of them. We had to do that to one of the students. We did that to Oscar. He was looking like Tecumumang. Anyway, go ahead. Tecumumang was a bad dude, but go ahead.
Leading the descendants of the Mayans, beheaded the horse of Pedro de Alvarado with his lance, convinced that it was part of the conquistador.
Now stop right there. In other words, you know that image, the Minotaur and the Satyr, where there's part man, part goat. This is what they say. Tecumumang thought this dude riding on a big horse was one body. So he threw a lance and took the horse's head off, and then of course Pedro de Alvarado got off the horse and killed his ass. Go ahead.
Alvarado stood up and killed him. A few horses in medieval war trappings scattered the mass of Indians, sowing terror and death.
In other words, you guys know how when it says a few horses in medieval war trappings, that's talking about the horses were adorned like they did back in the medieval days with the jousting, how the horse would have a coat of mail or steel mail on them, and the person riding on it would be dressed like a knight. They were scared to death of that. Go ahead.
During the colonizing process, priests and missionaries spread for the superstitious Indians benefit the tale that horses were of sacred origin. For Santiago, Spain's patron, Slovakia,
When it
Spain's
says
patron,
Santiago Spain's patron saint, supposedly Santiago is the Apostle James. That's how you say Santiago. They don't say like in the book or in American Spanish. They don't say Jaime. Nobody say Jaime down there. That's damn Jewish shit. They'll say Santiago and Tiago, right? So they were spreading rumors that the horse was of sacred origin, and they were attributing it to the original Apostle James. Go ahead.
He said, rode a white horse, which had won valiant victories against the Moors and the Jews with the aid of divine providence.
Oh, that's another James there, another James. Somebody during the battle of the Reconquest of Spain. Go ahead.
Bacteria and viruses were the most effective allies. The Europeans brought with them, like biblical plagues.
Oh, listen to this. The Europeans brought with them, like biblical plagues. This is Deuteronomy with all of the what? The Most High said with the blasting and mildew, with the fever, the consumption, all of these things. Continue.
Smallpox and what is that? Tetanus?
Tetanus.
Tetanus. Okay, like tetanus shot. Okay, Slovakia. Smallpox and tetanus. Various lung, intestinal, like your intestines, intestinal, and venereal diseases. Trachoma. Okay, trachoma, typhus, leprosy, yellow fever, and teeth rotting caries.
Caries is how you say cavities in Spanish. Caries. Go ahead.
Smallpox was the first to appear. Must not this unknown and horrible epidemic, which produced burning fever and decomposed the flesh, be a chastisement from the gods?
No, it says from the gods, but it was from the Most High. But listen to this. It says, must not this unknown and horrible epidemic, which produced burning fever and decomposed the flesh. That's the scripture. The Most High said He will give you what? Burning, fever, it says, and what? And consumption. This is all Deuteronomy being described after the fact, historically. Continue, brother.
Invaders moved into, what is that word?
La Scala.
La Scala. Slovakia. So invaders moved into La Scala.
Now that, hold on. That TL is pronounced like our TZ, like Tazah.
Okay.
It's a derivative, a derivation of that.
Okay. So one native eyewitness reported, and then the epidemic spread. Cough, burning hot, pustules? Pustules
are the little bumps on your body that grow and full of pus and then they burst. It's what the buboes, they call them, the bubonic plague, they call them buboes.
So not
The
like
measles have the same thing where they start off as little red dots, then they grow and get white pus and then they erupt. And that's like the harshest part of it is once they fill up the pus and begin to burst. Go ahead.
Reported another. The contagious, oppressive, cruel pustule sickness brought death to many.
Yeah, pustule. That's just if you look that up in the dictionary, that's any type of scar or any type of dermatological phenomena that produces pus. That's what a pustule is. Go ahead.
Okay. That's a many. The Indians died like flies. Their organisms had no defense against the new diseases. Those who had survived were feeble and useless. The Brazilian anthropologist Darcy Leviero estimates that more than half the aboriginal population of America, Australia, and Oceania died from the contamination of first contact with white men.
And this is where we're gonna stop. Now let me say this. Now while we say America, Australia, and Oceania, what we just read in Ezekiel chapter 5, this is where the Most High had to some of the places where the Most High had scattered us, and he was just sending the first of the families of the beast to leave Europe. And so they came to where? They came to the Americas, and they came to what was called the South Pacific, like we read, which is Australia and Oceania. All of those brothers was Israelites. And it said more than 50%, more than half of the indigenous or aboriginal population of America, Australia, and Oceania died from the contamination of first contact. That's not including the warfare. So next week, we will pick it up from they crave gold like hungry swine. All right?
I have a quick question about Australia.
Yes.
So when you see the Aborigines, I guess that's what they're called, were they there before they were shipped there, or?
Oh, they were. Listen, you have different families. You have the ones that they call Aborigines are of one breed. The ones that they call Maori, the Maori are I'm gonna call it the paternal. They'll tell you this. The paternal gene of the Samoans, of the Tongans, of the Tahitians, of the Fijians. They're all sons and daughters of the Maori. And the Maori, huh?
Maori in English.
Huh?
It's Maori in English.
Oh well, shit! Their language is Maori. What is it? Maori, right?
Yeah.
Okay. They all are. Man, just a couple of weeks ago, I shared on my Facebook page how they all come from the west of South America and Colonial. Yeah. And then they found the same traces as far, let's say, as far northeast into South America as Colombia. So from Colombia all the way down to Peru, those are the people that inhabited the South Pacific that weren't already there. So
and the Maori.
Huh?
What's interesting about the Maori people, they make in rugby, one of the most famous rugby players.
All Black.
The one that for New Zealand, the All Blacks is actually the New Zealand team, and it's mainly because of the Maoris. And there was a guy called Dorado about maybe like 10 years ago, and this guy was just a phenom. Like literally, you would have like and rugby players aren't small, and when the English played New Zealand, literally 220-pound men we trying to like hold on to his legs, and he was still sprinting.
Yeah.
Like the strength, like
that's
interesting.
What's his name?
John Alomu.
John Alomu.
Yeah.
Okay, but yeah, and let me say this. It's something I was gonna say. Because they all to this very. I mean, yeah, right up. You know, we got one of the clients that live right over here. That's from teach. We dropped it on him. They all listen. If you want to see how they live in real life, you guys got to go watch. The first movie is called Once We're Kings or Once We're Warriors. You're gonna think you're watching the 70s Bronx, 70s Harlem Watts.
It's on Netflix.
Huh?
On Netflix.
They got that on Netflix?
No, I'm asking.
I know, I just an old movie, man. Shit. I grew up with all these people, so I'm watching their movie. I don't think it's on Netflix. I saw it way back in the day, download, the MP4s. But look it up, and maybe they have it on Netflix, but it was called Once We're Warriors. And they lived the curses of Deuteronomy, and they are called by the Brits, they're called by the Australians, and they call themselves niggas. That's how it is in Fiji, that's how it is in Samoa, that's how it is in New Zealand, that's how it is in Tonga, that's how it is in Tahiti. So, yes, sister, you do have them, but listen, and so I can't go as far as to say that the family of the Australians that they call the Aborigines are not Israelites, because they went through the very same and the most. Let me put it like this: if you want to know who caught the worst of all of it in Oceania, it was the Aborigines of Brazil. The Aborigines, which I don't know why they say Aborigines in one place and Indians in another. Aborigine means indigenous. It means, from that native too. But they call those ones, like the ones that played in the movie Crocodile Dundee, they all literally look alike. They and the Tasmanians are the people that caught the most hell in the South Pacific, literally. So, to me, biblically, that constitutes them. You can find pictures of the last surviving Tasmanian man. He died a while back. The last one. And so, you got different families, but those, according to what we're reading, biblically, and then comparing their history to, those are Israelites,
That's a shame.
Yeah, man. But you found it, Yatazan?
Yeah, but it's not available on Netflix in the UK.
Oh, you talking about Once for Warriors?
Yeah.
You gotta watch the movie, man. I mean, let me say, it ain't no action-filled movie. It ain't nothing with no deep plot. It just shows the ghettos of New Zealand, simple and plain, huh? And the domestic abuse that takes place between the husbands and the wives, the incest and the molestation that takes place by the uncles and the friends of the father and mother against the children, the no option. Literally, you gotta see it. It's straight up Deuteronomy, but from the perspective of cursed shalt thou be in the city, and cursed shalt thou be in the field. And that's after having been conquered by the British, who would then go on to call themselves Australians and New Zealanders. You understand? Tasmanians. So that's what the Most High said in Isaiah chapter 60. He said, look how they bring your sons and your daughters from afar. It says your heart shall, how does it go? Because it means the sense or feeling of being overwhelmed. But it says your heart shall flow. How does it go? Your heart shall be enlarged. Thank you. Shall be enlarged when you flow together. We all got the same spirit everywhere that we are. You'd be shocked to see how all the indigenous and the little towns live like you, and how all the so-called Latinos got the same humor, the same, just every damn thing. But anyway, so we're going to pause it there. Next week, next Friday, we pick back up Jeremiah chapter 51, where we left off at verse 13, breaking verse 13 down with Habakkuk chapter 2, verses 5 through 17, and then moving on to verse 14. Verse 14, we got a couple with Nahum, I think chapter 2 and chapter 3, but that's what this is about. It's about taking Jeremiah chapter 51, verse for verse, and bringing it to life with the rest of the scriptures. Then we're going to move on and start all over again with Daniel chapter 2 and really get caught up on the times that we're living in now. All right, y'all?
Come.
Yeah.
Shalom, Mark.
Shalom.
Hey, shalom, brothers. Shalom, sisters.
Shalom.
Shalom.
Right.